From pride to pain, parents reveal their biggest disappointments in their adult children. He got a $200,000 inheritance when his father passed away 2 years ago. He's broke now. He's 24 years old and has a full-blown crystal addiction that started in the last 6 months. He was fired from the job that he got at 18 because he was under the influence and manic. As a sidebar, his manager was the one that introduced him to the stuff. Since then, he's dedicated his time to either finding or using crystal. He's been arrested 3 times and spent 30 days in jail and continues to use even though he's on probation. He's angry because we won't allow him to live with us while he's using. He's now homeless. He broke into our house and stole some of his father's sports memorabilia to support his habit. Some of it's not replaceable and very sentimental. He's a shell of the person we knew 6 months ago, both figuratively and literally. We can't hold a normal conversation and he's constantly twitching. We've offered to get him help, but he's convinced that the substances have set him free and we're all living in a delusional world where we have to work and conform to society. It's killing us. On the other hand, our daughter, 23, just graduated college in June with a paralegal degree and she's decided to go to law school. She's afraid to celebrate her success because she doesn't want to make him feel bad or upset him, but F him for taking that away from her. My son is 25 and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at around 15 years old, maybe younger. After he became too old and too big for me to manage his meds, he refused to take them, and his life has been a roller coaster of disasters ever since. Between prison time, both juvie and adult, bad decisions, self-deleting ideation, substance use, fathering 2 children he doesn't see from the same mother, and insisting on making up reasons to not speak to me, I'm done. Because honestly, there's nothing I can do for him. At this point, I'm just waiting to get a phone call where I need to go and identify a body. He's 20 and refuses to go to college or get a job. He lives with his mum, so all I can do is talk to him about it. I fear for his future. Like, his parents, aren't immortal, and he doesn't seem to have any self-preservation skills. Some people do struggle with motivation after they leave school. Mostly it doesn't last forever, though I was definitely like your son. Hopefully he can find a program or even just a hobby that he feels okay doing to maybe start looking at something that he enjoys and that interests him. Not me, but my uncle. We're born and raised in West Germany. We're Kurdish of origin. My father and uncle lived an incredibly hard life back in Turkey with very strict parents. My uncle wanted his children to live a different life, with an understanding father figure. It was his first child, and yeah, he enabled him, but he was never a doormat, he just did what he thought was best for his son, because he had never had an understanding father figure. He's a very kind and hard-working man who did everything for my cousins. While the younger ones are decent and successful people, the oldest one was always a bit of a piece of work. He never finished school or worked in his entire life, and at the same time he belittled my uncle for his work. Said things like he wouldn't even leave his bed for the money my uncle makes, that he's stupid for working for someone else, and that he doesn't understand life. They always believed in him. They gave him money so he could open his own stores, or bought him expensive cars and stuff so he'd get motivated and do something with his life. After about 10 years, the guy's 28 now, and a lot of money later, he asked for it again. My uncle told him basically that he wants to see a business plan first and that he has to wait about 3 months because they're renovating the house. My cousin threw a tantrum and left for a while. In the meantime, his parents renewed the first floor, walls, floor, bathroom, including furniture in his and his brother's rooms. Guys, one day my cousin came back while nobody was home and just lost it. Called my uncle and screamed something about how he has to wait for his money while they're spending it for themselves. And then he smashed the place. Everything, new and old, he ripped out the floor and destroyed the bathroom. There was water everywhere and smashed in walls. He slashed furniture and destroyed his brother's electronics. He had to be so angry. I was speechless when I saw it. They threw him out. They took his keys and we haven't heard from him since. But on the way out, he fought with his father and called his mother a B-word without provocation. It just broke my uncle's heart. He isn't the same man anymore. Yes, my cousin has mental problems. There's no diagnosis as we can't force him to a psychologist. At this point, it could be everything from depression to narcissism. He's never had a substance or alcohol problem as far as I know. As another commenter here wrote, some people just seem to be rotten. Pathological liar. 33 years old and he'd rather walk 10 miles to tell a lie than to stand still and tell the truth. His ex-wives all found out the same thing. I'm not disappointed in my 18-year-old, but I sure wish I knew how to activate him. He graduated in May, has no desire to go to college and no real aspirations at all. He's pretty much been in his room on his phone since. He's struggled for many years with anxiety, which we're treating, And I know a lot of things are difficult for him, but man, I just wish I knew how to get him excited about anything, whether it's a job or a hobby or a plan or whatever. At 18, I was exactly the same. I didn't really care about anything. I certainly didn't feel like an adult. I'm just shy of 23 now, and I did come out of it, slowly and painfully. At the same time, not everyone I know did. Some of my friends are in exactly the same place they were at the end of high school, except that they got a job instead of school. So you can't just sit back and hope he figures it out either. I'd suggest helping him cultivate a healthy personal life more so than pushing him to start making money. Hobbies are a great help, especially if they push him to be a little more social. I spent absurd amounts of time as a teen holed up in my room with my guitar, and that skill eventually led to me branching out and meeting people at jam sessions. He's 42, he lives with his dad, and is now 6 years into a 2-year degree. He's gone through 4 decent cars in the last 6 months. His dad bought the cars, and he trashed them. He's also threatened physical attacks to his dad. He disowned his older sister over a political argument on Facebook. She said I'm leaving this discussion before we say things we'll regret, and he tried to forbid it, saying if she left she was disrespecting him and was no longer related to him. Okay, I'm reading other people's comments here to see what I can do to be a better child to my parents while I still have the chance. In short, don't be a jerk, follow your dreams, be independent while also spending time with your parents. I'm a little disappointed in my son because he's too much like me. He's a solid introvert who's afraid to ask for help and doesn't want to bother people, even with very legitimate requests. He's an expert procrastinator. I remember being that age and being so much like that. I'm not sure how I got through university, but I've also been a successful engineer for 30 years, so I've still got a lot of hope for him. Also, both of my kids vape and smoke. We've been anti-smokers for all of our adult lives, and I'm sad to see them choose to do something negative like that. They both apparently want to quit, but it's a tough road. For those of you who don't have disappointing adult children, I can always be yours. Same, I'll call to beg for money and everything. He's 31 and he's been a hardcore smack addict since age 15. He's put us all through hell. I'm disappointed and we're estranged, but he's still my son and I love him. No drive, no ambition, and no work ethic worth a damn. He's 25 and he peaked in the 6th grade. Oh, hey, Mom. My ex-husband was the son that my parents wanted their actual son to be, so they're mad that my brother isn't like him, and they're mad that I divorced him. Double whammy. Never mind that we were just fundamentally not working as a couple. They basically see it as me stealing away their chance at having the perfect child in a son-in-law. Oh well. I'll tell you why I'm disappointed in my son. We took the Ancestry.com test, and he doesn't share my genetic background at all. Maybe it's not actually my son who disappointed me. Oh, I clicked this link because for some reason I was looking to hate myself more. I found fewer reasons for that, surprisingly. Well played, Internet. Because they're now 30, still in my basement and looking at crap that I think's going to bring the feds to my house soon on the internet. My son is 24 and by some standards a disappointment. He has a degree and no job. He struggles with motivation and his sleep patterns are terrible. I don't think he has a plan to move forward with his life. Earlier in the year, my husband, his dad, was diagnosed with cancer. I thank God every day for my slacker son. He's so kind. Every time he makes dinner, because I know you must be tired, or comes and gives me a hug when I get home from work, makes it possible for me to keep going. It's great that you can be thankful for his compassion and sensitivity. Also, having a degree in this day and age is no guarantee of getting a job. It is brutal out there. Your son seems like a good egg, better than most. I hope both of your situations get better. Not a parent, but some current drama in my family has my parents pretty upset with my brother. He's 20 years old and the youngest sibling of 8. He does get spoiled for being the youngest, and he also misses out on a lot because he's the youngest. I'm almost 10 years older than him. We're fairly close though. He was having trouble maintaining a job, so his dad got him hired as an assistant in his painting business. All he had to do was show up and do easy tasks, and he'd have the hours needed to pay for his car and living expenses. He did just fine for a couple of months, but then Mum and Dad went on holiday. He went home early without telling anyone one day, and then the next day he pulled a no-show. So his dad gets a call that he didn't show up and he won't answer his phone. Dad tried to call him and got no answer over several hours. Finally, my mum got through to his girlfriend, who said that my brother told her he'd talked to my dad and he had said he could have the day off. Well, that was a complete lie. My brother is required to make regular payments to my parents for the car they helped him buy. As long as he keeps making payments, he has access to the car. If he misses a payment, he loses access to the car until he pays. He decided to get a delivery job that doesn't give enough hours to make his car payment, but still requires his car. So he says he's got this job and he needs his car, so he's allowed to keep his car even though he's missing payments. Everyone just found out he doesn't even have a delivery job, or a job at all, so he's lost his car and all references for a new job. His girlfriend hasn't been too impressed with the lying either. Also, I'm not really taking sides in it. I don't approve of my parents giving him handouts and babying him, but I also don't approve of any of his behavior that he's picked up from the crowd he hangs out with. They're both the idiots here and to an extent the victims. I just sit off to the side and observe with popcorn. It's between them and I hope they'll figure it out. He's a deadbeat dad for his first daughter, which means I can't see my first granddaughter anymore. He's been in and out of jail since the age of 11. He's a multiple offense convicted felon as an adult, who will steal from anyone, myself and his mother included, and has threatened to have most of his family members killed. He's been known to carry stolen firearms and frequently uses his brother's name to try and avoid being caught. He's a substance addict, living with a substance-addicted girl, and now they have 2 more children together, both of whom suffer from the effects of their parents' habits. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? My mother's disappointed that I left a £33,000 a year job for a £28,000 one because I had 2 mental breakdowns. Even though everything now is perfect, she says, "Sometimes we just have to get on with it, you know." I'm still not sure what my parents think of me. I was the promised child who got 99th percentile on aptitude tests in kindergarten, who aced tests and memorized the presidents by age 4, at my dad's insistence. And then I ended up just blundering my way through school because what started as a bad habit of not doing homework eventually amalgamated into depression-driven apathy about education. I dropped out of college and I've spent more of my time in therapy learning how to be a good person and be happy. Which does make my mum happy, but I can feel my entire extended family's disappointment in me that I chose to work an 8-to-5 job and just live in an apartment with my cat. On the bright side, I've been more confident in my life choices than I've ever been, and I wouldn't trade the positive mindset I've been working so hard on for any amount of work discipline. I can't blame you. Mental health is everything when it comes to a stable life. Being happy is something that more people should prioritize. My dad always told me, "I don't care if you dig ditches as your career, as long as you're happy doing it." I'm taking some risks now to try and do what will make myself happy in the future, and I've not looked back. Reading this has strengthened my resolve to do what makes me happy. I sincerely hope you have a really happy life. Ooh, good timing. I have to be semi-vague, but hopefully you get the gist of it. My middle daughter is 19, but we've had issues her entire life. I strongly suspect bipolar disorder or narcissism. Currently, her infant child has been removed from her care by CPS for multiple reasons, notably her erratic behavior she showed and continues to show, and also heavy Mary J use. We suspect other substances at play, but we've got zero proof. Instead of cooperating to get her child back, she's fought kicking and screaming every step of the way, making it much harder than necessary. At the same time, blaming her mother and vilifying her to the point that she's lied to CPS in an attempt to have them remove her 4-year-old sister from her mother's care. Calling old friends and family, giving them a hugely false story in an attempt to alienate her mother and have zero friends or help. It's a giant mess she's created and refuses to take any blame or acknowledge that she's the issue at all with. He doesn't like garlic bread and plays the violent farming simulator. End him. Right now, right here. Not liking garlic bread? What the frick? Destroy your mistake of a child. Right now! My mum is extremely disappointed in me because I'm not having kids. It was apparently my sole purpose in life. I'm in the middle of becoming estranged from my parents. They don't approve of how I'm raising my sons, and they can't even bring themselves to be around them. Our last attempt at a family vacation left my sisters yelling at my parents and then storming off. Their complaint is that I don't have any boundaries for the kids. I do have boundaries, they just aren't the same as my dad had when I was growing up. He was a real hardliner with major anger issues. He threw me up a stairwell once when I left my boots behind at a park. Due to living in that household, I'm attempting to let my kids grow up thinking that making mistakes is part of life, you just have to learn from it. In any event, my children are apparently monsters and he can't get over that, so I'm about to cut him and my stepmom out of our lives. My goal is to raise kids who are respectful of others and their space, yet feel able to explore their world and make mistakes without fear. She physically bullies her husband, calls him worthless and leaves him alone with the baby for days without telling him she's going anywhere. He'll come home from work and she's gone for 3 days in a 5-star hotel with spa treatment. It's awful. It's a little scary to read about this as the father of a 5-month-old. Dude, we're about to have our first baby and this was the wrong thing to read right now. Oh God, maybe I need to reevaluate whether I want to have kids anytime soon. This is a little grueling, isn't it? Rest assured, prospective parents, most kids are just kind of crap bags or unmotivated at some point, but usually it gets better. My son always viewed me only as a milking cow. He doesn't care about anything but his own happiness, and he even refuses to talk to me. If it's still like this when he turns 2, I'm done with the entire affair. I like this one. Made me smile. My parents are disappointed in me because I won't pretend I wasn't damaged from the way they raised me. My mum held getting a degree as one of the pinnacle achievements you can do because it was such a big deal to her going back to school and getting her degree in her 40s. As someone who works in IT, I dropped out about a year into school and I haven't looked back. That was 10 years ago. I hid that I dropped out for many years before I actually told her. She was disappointed, but in my opinion, the astronomical cost of a degree doesn't have a good return on investment, and in IT I've worked up to a very high salary without one. Certifications, mentors, learning on the job and at home. To me, a 4-year degree doesn't make much logical sense in a fast-moving field like this one. My 19-year-old daughter failed out in her first semester of college. Not a big deal. Sometimes freshmen get overwhelmed and don't do so hot in their classes. My daughter, however, just decided to not show up at the classes that weren't theater-related. So she failed math and English, which she could have aced. Now, had she owned up to this, there would have been little issue. Lesson learned, do better on probation, and pass the classes next semester. What she did do was just not register for classes for the next semester and try her luck living in the dorms anyway. Illegally. Somehow it took the college 3 months to catch up with her. She finally fessed up in March. By that time, she had been trespassing at the college for those 3 months, and we had to beg them not to throw her into prison. We were literally on the phone with college officials for an hour, begging them to just let her come home. She'd screwed up, but she'd learned her lesson. Luckily, if you can call it that, her grandmother rushed to her rescue and paid off her outstanding balance on her bill. $6,000 for 3 months she lived on campus, boarding and her food card. Her grandmother, my mum, then proceeded to tell my daughter she never had to return to us. We were evil people and she'd protect her from the likes of us. My daughter, who used to call me every night and called me anytime she had problems, just cut all ties with us because facing her responsibilities wasn't a requirement anymore. We tried calling her, tried telling her we weren't angry and to just come home. Nothing doing. We would have been angry, but we would have worked it out. Instead, we became the bad guys in her fairy tale, and for the past 5 months she's gone on shopping sprees, goofed off, and had the time of her life. I've seen her twice since it all happened. Both times she treated me like an evil monster. Both times I went home in tears, despising my mother more and more. My daughter is going back to school tomorrow like nothing has ever happened. My witch of a mum is paying for it. You might be thinking, be grateful she's footing the bill. The problem with that is my oldest daughter has worked her butt off to get her degree, and my mum refused to help her because she's bisexual. My mum is doing this to get back at her for embarrassing her in front of her church. I refused to let the younger daughter get help from her because of this in the past, so my younger daughter has also stabbed her older sister in the back by doing this. I'm so very disappointed in the entitled brat my daughter has become. And if I ever see my witch of a mother again, I'll wring her fat neck right in front of all of those so-called Christians in her church. Well, my son's in prison for life. Although I'm often disappointed in their actions or behavior, I'm never disappointed in my children. This is the most mom answer out of all of them, and it made me smile. My nephews are mama's boys who are in their late 20s and early 30s and still live at home. They went away to college and couldn't hack it for more than a year or two before moving back home. Any girl they date has to have mummy's approval, or they dump her. One girl was the wrong religion, and their mum, my sister-in-law, wouldn't permit her in the house. I forgot to add that the eldest was a professional student. It took him 8 years to figure out what he wanted to do, but hey, it was all in daddy's dime. He went back for his master's, which surprisingly he did complete in 2 years. It's in cybersecurity. He could land a 6-figure job anywhere in the world, but that would require moving out. I'm in my 30s and unmarried. My mum worries every time I take solo holidays. I'm sure she wishes I had a husband to go along. I have a high school-age boy, one of 3 kids, who sometimes jokes that he's disappointing us and that he's kind of a loser, and I feel so awful when he says things like this. If any of you listening ever feel like that, I want you to know that for the overwhelming majority of you, your parents do love you and they care about you, and they're not disappointed in you at all. They just want you to see all of the goodness and possibilities in yourself that they see, so that you can be the happiest version of yourself you can be. You don't need to be some kind of super achiever. You just need to find something, or maybe things, that sparks some kind of joy for you. When did you realize a child might actually be the devil? My younger brother is a psychopath. We are 13 years apart. When I was very pregnant with my second child, he tried to drop-kick me in the stomach and said he wanted to get rid of my little one. He was mad because I wouldn't let him play a video game. Another time, when he was around 6 or 7, he took a baseball bat and jumped on the neighbor's car hood and started bashing it on the hood and roof, making dents. The neighbor came out horrified, and when he yelled at my brother, my mum came out and threatened to whoop my neighbor's butt. My mum is part of the reason my brother is such a little turd. He's 17 now, and I'm sure he'll end up in prison someday. I did childcare for a family with 3 kids. A girl who was 10 and 2 boys who were around 8 and 5. The youngest boy was a jerk, to be honest. He was just mean. He'd hurt his siblings and me. Obviously, a 5-year-old doesn't cause much damage, but he'd really dig his nails into you, pull your hair, stuff like that. And he'd find it funny. He was also kind of manipulative and knew that he could get away with anything, and seemed to play on that. He was extremely angelic looking, blonde hair and blue eyes and cherubic face. But he was a monster. One winter evening, I picked up the 3 kids after some school performance and went to the local cafe. It seemed all of the parents were going there to socialize, and we were all being picked up by the family's mum. So I was chatting at one of the tables with the parents while the kids played around. There were probably 15 kids of varying ages running around causing havoc. Suddenly, above the din, I hear a scream of pain. Quite obviously, a different noise to the normal yelling and shrieking. I was too far away to see what had happened, but I got a horrible feeling in my stomach. Then one of the siblings ran up to me and told me what had happened. Apparently, the 5-year-old crap bag had grabbed the hands of another kid and pressed them against the boiling hot radiator, holding them there while the kid screamed. I ran over and berated him. The mother had already got to her own child, and he showed not 1 ounce of guilt or remorse. He was smiling when I ordered him to apologize to the other boy. Jesus, I'm half convinced he's a budding psychopath. Myself and all the other neighborhood kids used to catch frogs, salamanders, newts, the usual things. We even had it down to a ridiculous level in retrospect, where one of my friends could perfectly imitate the mating call of a tree frog. She was a sweet girl, grew up pretty weird later on. Her little brother was a bit crazy though. We had those styrofoam rockets from a museum of science where the hollow rocket sat on a plastic cylinder. When you slam down the whole apparatus, the air pressure would shoot the rocket up into the air 20 to 40 feet or so. Well, her little brother stole our frogs one day and put them in the rocket. Cue my friend screaming in horror as she realizes what he's about to do. Those frogs more or less exploded inside the rocket. We stopped using that rocket. Well, we don't know that he knew what would happen. No idea how old that kid was, but it's entirely possible that he wanted to make astronaut frogs. The sad part is, if he wasn't a psychopath, this will probably haunt his thoughts from time to time. And also, if you hadn't already worked it out, there are some messed up stories coming up. You've been warned. I work with emotionally disturbed kids, so, I see a lot of kids doing evil stuff. The worst one was when a kid grabbed a 3/4 full carton of milk and peed in it to fill it up. He then, calm as anything, yelled for the principal to come out. As soon as he walked out of his office door, the kid threw the milk/pee all over him. The principal was wearing a down jacket, and I'll never forget the milky pee soaking into it, covering his face and hair. It was my first week working in this sort of environment, so I hadn't reached the point where I'd normalized it, and was so beyond horrified. Honestly, the calm, creepy manner he did it in, and the joy he got, makes this situation stick out more than the kid who cut up a rat, or the kid who set a frog on fire. I didn't witness it, but it happened at my local school. A 10-year-old girl with a heart defect was strung up with a skipping rope by some kids in her class. I can't even comprehend what those little monsters were thinking. It makes me sick to my stomach that a 10-year-old kid would do something like that. She survived, thought I should add that in. When I was in preschool, some kid, a little mental, snuck up behind me with safety scissors and snipped a hole in my cheek. That's the only clear memory I have of preschool. I was bleeding like crazy. Sorry to disappoint you guys, but it was on my right face cheek, not my rear cheek. My neighbor's daughter, who was 4 or 5, stomped on her rabbit in the garden while chanting, "This is for your own good," with each stomp. I told my neighbor what I saw, but my daughter would never do that. And now we don't even say good morning to each other. I saw my 5-year-old neighbor unalive a puppy for fun, and then he tried to blame it on my brother. Luckily, I witnessed the situation and cleared things up. My cousin, 6 or 7 years old I think she was jealous of the new puppy, so she threw the little buddy out of the window. I remember her mum telling us like, well, you know, kids do crazy things, with an awkward smile on her face and being terrified on the inside. I interviewed an elementary student about what he wanted to be when he grows up. He said serial killer. Alarming, but I just responded that that wouldn't work out very well. What about a job? So he says he wants to be a police officer. And it's an interview, so I ask him why. Does he want to keep people safe? And he just told me he wants to use a weapon. That was it. I hope he doesn't make it. I was a careers advisor and a kid told me he wanted to do a butchery apprenticeship. So I started discussing options with him and found him some vacancies to apply for. We set a meeting to start filling in application forms the week after. 5 minutes after he left, his teacher came in and said I shouldn't help him find a butchery apprenticeship because he'd already killed a bunch of small animals, ranging from a hedgehog to his own dog, and was openly on the lookout for a horse to skin. He'd also asked what would happen if he stabbed her in the neck with a compass. So teaching him knife skills was not a good idea. That kid was tall, built, and powerful. My 7-year-old cousin shoved her cat into a duffel bag and zipped it shut. Kept it in there even after it peed itself and threw up. Needless to say, my family found a better home for the cat. When I was about 4, I did this. Not till it peed itself, but my cat was my best friend and I wanted to take her to school with me. My mother quickly helped the cat before anything went too bad. When I was around 8, me and a couple of friends found a pretty large horned lizard in my grandmother's backyard. I was always fascinated by animals growing up, so I was super excited and examining how awesome it looked. Then my friends beat it to a pulp with sticks and rocks. I screamed at them that they were the worst human beings in the world and went inside and locked the door. I refused to let them use the phone to call their parents to come pick them up, so they ended up just walking home. Screw those guys. A friend of mine's daughter poked in the center woofer thing of my really expensive speaker system. When I told her she couldn't do this, she laughed in my face and seemed to enjoy my disappointment. She didn't get any flack from it from her parents either, as at their home it's a mess and the kids can do whatever the frick they want. I'm of the opinion, my house, my rules. Don't break my crap, you children of the corn. I want to tell a story I witnessed at a playground. It was along the lines of older brother is fed up with little brother, so takes a plastic shovel and smashes little brother over the head in the style of Tom and Jerry. A couple of weeks back, I saw my nephew for the first time in ages. My wife and I had kept our distance because he was pure evil. But it had been so long we felt like we had to make an effort and go visit my sister. Well, the little 5-year-old crapbag was now next level evil. Screaming at his mum, throwing things at the furniture, my parents' furniture by the way, they were visiting, kicking their cat, shouting over the top of us if we tried to calm him down. He frickin' shouted until he was red with rage, veins popping, then stormed off upstairs after we said he couldn't play in the garden because it was night time. My sister was at the bottom of the stairs and I saw her and thought she'd be upset. I looked at her and asked if she was alright and she just sighed, yeah, as though it was the most normal thing in the world. I asked if she wanted me to go talk to him, so I went upstairs and he'd shut himself in my parents' room and was leaning against the door, so I couldn't get in. Obviously, being an adult, I forced the door open. He runs to a corner of the room and I calmly went over to him and made the mistake of getting on my knees to be at his level. And the little crap bag just punches me square in the face. I couldn't believe it. I just got up and went downstairs and said to my wife, "Come on, we're going." And my sister kind of just said, "Okay, that's fair." We'd been there maybe 30 minutes total. I don't think we'll be visiting for another year or two at least. I was the child. The day after my dad had his vasectomy, I kicked him in the crotch. I was only 4, but still. Well, thank you for at least confirming that some of the heinous little monsters turn out okay. I definitely did things that were at the very least quite cruel, and I think I turned out alright eventually. Kids like that face-punchy one might need professional help. Most of us just need good parental correction. In high school, my twin sister connived with my 12-year-old sister to wash the toilet with my toothbrush. They did it after I yelled at my twin for lending my clothes to a girl who was a serial clothes stealer. I got strep throat, and they decided not to tell me until years later. They laugh about it, and my parents were so horrified they refused to believe it despite being confirmed by the culprits. Also, my niece peed on her dad's PlayStation at like 3 years old. She also tried to put her number 2 in his coffee. Some kids at my bus stop shoved the outcast kid into a porta potty and tipped it over, side door down. It was pretty evil. I stopped 2 children throwing bricks at a cat while it was stuck under a fence. I'll never forget it, and I'll never understand how they could have been so wicked in the first place. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When I was younger, I got invited to spend the day with a friend and her family at her farm. They'd just bought it, and the parents couldn't keep their kids entertained while they were fixing up the place, so I was brought along. I didn't know them super well, and I wasn't friends with the girl or anything, but I don't think she had many friends, so I got invited anyways. My friend had a little brother who, after a while of seeing horses and playing tag, suggested we go catch some frogs or toads. I thought that was great fun, so we all did. And then after we put them in a little area, at least 9 or 10 of the little guys, the younger brother brings out 2 long, twisty metal poles. He takes a frog out and sets it down, and happily smashes his metal pole into the frog, impaling it. I was shocked, thinking, did that really just happen? I was a really sensitive kid, so I started crying and begging him to stop hurting the animals. He told me there was an extra pole if anyone else wanted to impale the frogs as well. His sister told me he does this all the time and tried to calm me down, but it didn't help because the whole time she was trying to soothe me, this kid was choosing the next frog and smashing it. I tried to set the frogs free, but he wouldn't let me. Eventually, I ran a little ways away. I didn't want to be around her brother for the rest of the day. I was too scared or embarrassed to call my mum and ask her to pick me up, so I spent the whole day there, really uncomfortable and kind of sad. Some kid in my elementary hugged the class pet so hard that its eyes popped out. Witnessed my 6-year-old niece trip her 4-year-old cousin so he fell and slammed his head into the concrete floor. She then smiled and said he tripped over his shoelace when the other adults turned around. When I was in a nursery, ages 3 to 4, I was a very anxious kid who was really attached to my mum, to the point where I'd cry for her for damn near an hour when I got dropped off. To aid this, my mum gave me a soft toy, a panda who went by the name of Pindy. I frickin' loved him and took him everywhere, including nursery, to help me overcome my homesickness. Anyway, I was messing around on my own because I didn't get on with any of the other kids, and this random girl just runs up and snatches Pindy from me and runs away. I obviously start chasing her to get him back, and the evil little monster turns around, pushes me into a wall, and proceeds to beat 3 kinds of stupid out of me with my own teddy. Damn near got away with it since there weren't any supervisors in the area I was in, but luckily one of them heard and came to investigate. I was on vacation in Turkey, and we had a couple of cats around the hotel. Some stupid kids between 8 and 13 were throwing glass at the cats, and me at the age of 12 told them to stop while trying to impress a girl I met at that hotel. They didn't listen and kept throwing glass at the poor cats who screamed for help. Out of pure anger, I threw glass at them, and the glass shattered right in front of their legs, and a couple of them got glass on their legs and feet. 2 hours later, their father turned up and hit me in the face. Told my parents, and my mum kicked him in the nuts while my dad was violently arguing with some other guy of that family. I don't know how it ended, but we got to stay in the hotel, and they were gone the next day. Don't you frickin' hurt animals, especially cats, when I'm around. I had a neighbor kill my pet bunny when I was 6 and he was 13. She was a baby bunny and I was so careful with her and I really loved her. And this boy my dad made me play with, because his dad would sell mine substances, decided to pick her up by her little ears and just break her neck one day. She was a good girl and didn't deserve what he did to her. 2 things come to mind. First, when I was a child, we had neighbors up the street who I would often play with. My friends had a little sister, who was about 4 at the time this occurred. The neighbor's cat ended up having kittens, and I went to go look at them after they were old enough to adopt, thinking I could persuade my anti-cat parents into getting me one. And that's when I saw the youngest picking them up by their tails and flinging them around while giggling. Her parents barely scolded her. I went home crying, and my family promptly adopted 2 of the kittens to get them out of there. I guess I got what I wanted, cats, but I wish we could have taken them all. And second, I was at a sleepover in middle school where this happened, but I didn't participate in the truly bad parts of this story because, fortunately, my preteen conscience was decently developed. My friends were your stereotypical cool 12-year-old girls, and they decided it might be fun to sneak out and walk around the neighborhood. While on our midnight stroll, we came across a very nice convertible whose owner had left the top down. When they decided it'd be fun to prank the car, I said I had to be up early for some extracurricular, and went back to my friend's house because my parents were strict as frick, and I didn't want to get into trouble for trashing someone's car. I found out the next day they'd tossed bottles of pee inside. I didn't ask if the bottles were open or closed because I didn't want to know, but I still feel guilty to this day for not trying to stop them. Karma got me for my silence though, because after I got my first car, someone smashed the crap out of it in a parking lot, and didn't leave a note. A neighbor's kid, around 6 or 7 years old, would throw his 3 cats into the river and force them to swim to shore. He didn't care if they drowned in the currents. I wanted to toss this cruel kid into the river himself. Yep, a few of us are right there with you. Man, I probably should have predicted this, but there is a lot of very unwanted animal cruelty in this one. I guess I can't put my finger on whether that's better or worse than these kids inflicting it on their peers, though, so we'll just keep reading them all out. Punched my gentle giant of a dog right in the face. Dog had just walked into the living room, in her own home, and the visiting 7-year-old punched her in the face. Kid's mum said, "He just doesn't like animals." Never had them over again. This one is pretty tame, but I thought it would be worth a chuckle. I used to attend a weekly board game club, and some of the kids that showed up there were pretty wild. This one little girl, about 11 to 13 I think, in particular, was a notorious cheat, and usually up to no good. Anyway, she comes up to me with her phone out and starts recording me because I was singing a song and kind of failing at it. She says she's going to put it on YouTube, and I tell her, no, I don't want a video of me singing badly on YouTube. Well, she persists and says she's going to upload it anyway. Knowing the whole thing is a joke, I start saying that I'll take her to court if she uses my likeness without consent. She caves and wanders off for a bit. She comes back a few minutes later, still recording me. She asks, "Hey, the sky is blue right now, isn't it?" And without thinking, I reply, "Yes, it is." She wanders off again. About 20 minutes later, she comes back and says she's going to upload me singing again because I gave her consent. Obviously, I didn't. Then she shows me the video she'd been working on for the last while. "Hey, is it okay if I upload this video of you singing?" "Yes, it is." "Okay, thanks." I was at a loss for words. This girl's going to be a Fox News journalist one day. When I was renting an apartment in the city, the neighbors had a 9-year-old daughter who had learned in school that if you claim a man behaved inappropriately with you, the police will come. Well, she happened to like the flashing lights. The saddest part is she called 911 so many times with this crap just so she could see the lights that the cops started showing up with no lights and her mother was fined. It was an innocent kid thing, but not really innocent, since she would claim one of several older male neighbors was, well, being really bad. A couple of them were actually brought in and then released, thankfully without the media being informed of the reasons. I had this professor who taught the cognitive psych course a year after I'd taken it. She had been talking to our substance misuse and mental health professor, a very cool dude in my opinion, about how she used to work at some kind of camp for troubled kids. I remember hearing them talking behind me as they were going into the building. Apparently these kids had major issues. An 11-year-old had killed a squirrel on one of the nature hikes. When she asked them why, they said, "I wanted to know what it sounded like when it died." Irrelevant tip: teach your kids they're capable of inflicting adult-sized damage. Growing up, there was a very bizarre and angry kid who lived on the street behind where I lived. He was a bit of a butthole, but unlike most bully situations, the people he was a jerk to were jerks right on back, including my brothers and I. Looking back on it now, he probably had a pretty rough life at home based off the things he did. One story stands out. It was winter and there was snow and ice all over. I was probably around 10 or 11 at the time. I go out back and hear my first childhood dog yelping. I see this kid throwing ice at my dog. He didn't even live in the house behind ours. Some elderly nice couple did. But he was in their backyard throwing ice at my dog and scoring hits on her. Not going to lie, when I saw this I got my dog inside and my brothers and I chased this motherfricker down to his house. I'm not proud of this, but I taught him a lesson. I grabbed a big sheet of ice and smashed it over his head. He bled a bit from his head and staggered back to his house screaming and crying. He never messed with my dog again. He only lived in the neighborhood a few years and then his family moved away. I forget his first name, but remember his last one, which I won't say here. Hopefully, he got help. I had this little 4-year-old student that I was convinced is completely sociopathic. He was remarkably eloquent for his age and as sweet as peach pie. When the adults were watching, that is. One of the teachers of a class of 3-year-olds informed me that he had made a noose and tried to, well, set up some practical demonstrations with it. He came to me upset, and I asked him what's up, and he says another student wouldn't be his friend. I explained that not everyone wants to be friends, and that's okay. He said, "But I want it, and she should listen to me." They overwrote my Pokémon save file. My little cousin did this. I almost killed him. I flushed my mom's wedding ring down the toilet. She never got it back either. At age 15 or so, I was remanded to community service at a local low-income daycare for smoking doobies in the park. Justice is blind and dumb as hell. So, I'm on the fire escape smoking, and this kid who was small and had been getting bullied by a few others frickin' mercilessly sidles on over to the kid who bullies him the worst, who immediately starts moving away, when the small kid just whoops him like in street fight time. The smaller one then just walks over to the side, knocks his noggin on the wall a couple of times, starts crying, and goes to the teacher to tell her that Justin, the guy whose butt I just saw him kick, I never found out what happened to that kid, and to be honest, I don't want to. When did someone challenge you, not realizing your power level was over 9,000? When we were having a couple of drinks on Friday after work, I was challenged to a little marksmanship challenge by a colleague. Little did he know, but I've been shooting BBs competitively ever since I was 13. That's not to say I'm the greatest, but I've made it to the national finals for my country multiple times and came 3rd and 6th. I have all the special clothes and gear and such that you need to make it to such a level. The next Saturday, we showed up at the range that I always go to. It's not a day I usually train, so luckily not many people recognize me. And I whooped his butt left, right, and center that day. Out of 600 points, he scored about 200 to 250 if I remember correctly. I got about 580, which is around the average of what I used to shoot. He had to buy me a fancy bottle of whiskey, and now we shoot every 2 to 3 weeks together. Fun times! Kind of the reverse for me. I'm a physical education teacher, and I had a student that took a pretty bad tumble in class. Hit her head on the wall. Pretty clear concussion symptoms. So we get her stable, call mum and dad to come and get her. Dad shows up and I start going through the concussion symptoms and treatments with him, letting him know that a doctor's visit is probably in order. Anyway, I ramble incessantly about concussions for some time, and then he just politely nods and thanks me. He takes his daughter and leaves, and I see my principal standing behind me, and he can barely contain his laughter. Turns out the dad is an emergency room doctor, and he just sat there while his daughter's gym teacher gave him medical advice. My friend used to ride a unicycle as a kid. He worked construction, and they were working at a house that had an old unicycle. The other workers tried riding it and immediately fell off. My friend walked over to it and inspected the unicycle like it was the first time he'd ever seen one of them, and said it didn't look that difficult. They all laughed at him, and he said he thought he could ride it. Eventually, one of them bet him $100 he couldn't, and he jumped on and immediately rode it down the street. Okay, my power level is by no means over 9,000 on this. I'd probably rate it in the 1500s. But I've played chess since I was a small child, and I was the best player in the middle school chess club. The guy who owned the pool hall that me and my juvenile delinquent friends hung out in was talking about how dumb kids are these days, and said that he bet that nobody in my group of hoodlums could play chess. I beat him soundly, and then again in the rematch. Aha, the Anna Cramling effect. I do get some enjoyment from watching this unassuming Swedish lady beat every old chess dude that underestimates her. Good on you, I hope you bet that guy money. The property management company for my homeowners association insisted that I received emails that I never received, so I asked them to prove that I'd received them. They said they're sure that I received them. I'm a software engineer, and at the time I'd just finished an enterprise email delivery system, like an in-house constant contact. I knew the rules of the CAN-SPAM Act by heart. I knew exactly how their system worked. So this real witch of a property manager said, "I know how email works, you wouldn't understand." I mentally did the arrogant knuckle crack and started to explain, very methodically, how email delivery works and how they'd track various actions. I spent about 5 minutes detailing my credentials and why I was absolutely certain that they'd never sent me the emails they alleged that I'd received. When I was finished, the HOA board just agreed to waive the fines. I work for a company that notifies customers of deadlines by email. We get customers who claim they never received the email, so the deadline should not apply to them. When a customer opens one of our emails, we know exactly when, unless they've disabled automatic loading of images in their client, so I can tell them, you opened the 30-day warning email on May 8th at 7:14 p.m., you opened the 7-day warning email on May 29th, and again on June 4th. But you didn't click the link until September 24th after you opened the 7-day warning, and then the original 30-day warning 3 minutes after that. And then you clicked the link and received the notification that it was past the deadline. They never respond after being caught in a lie. Medieval Fair 2002. The carny running the fencing game picks me out of the crowd for being tall and challenges me to a bout against the master. Not a lot of people fence, so his gambit probably worked most of the time. But when he handed me that saber, I handed him his butt. When you're pretty good at something moderately obscure, these are the kinds of things you daydream will happen to you. My father trying to explain to me how computers and the internet work after he's called me over to figure out why his computer and internet aren't working. A guy from work challenged me to a tennis match. He must have been a hotshot back in his day, and to be fair, as far as mid-40s go, he wasn't bad. I, however, was national team and whooped his butt 6-0, 6-0. I would have eased up, but when I warned him I'm pretty good, he'd laughed it off. Look, I'm far from an expert, and I'm far from power level 9000, but I've been told jiu-jitsu doesn't work by several froggy drunk dudes. And it works. It always works. Went to a couple's night once, and the guy had wall-to-wall movies and framed posters in his basement. Super into it. I mentioned I used to be a movie nerd, but not so much anymore. He challenged us to a movie trivia board game, kind of in a condescending way, and I tried to politely decline, but my girlfriend insisted we play. They went first, missed the question, and then we ran the table. Never heard from them again. I'm an Academy Award-winning sound mixer, and almost everyone on film sets thinks they know my job better than me. Written in 2020, it happens a lot lately. I'm a microbiologist, so the number of people who've suddenly taken an interest in the subject in order to be confidently wrong about it is pretty upsetting. I have perfect pitch. It's not a thing I can turn off. Notes simply are a pitch clear as day, much like how red is clearly distinct from green. Anywho, music class in junior high. Teacher explains that Mozart had perfect pitch and walks over to the piano, plays a note and says, and just by hearing it, he'd be able to tell you what that was. Now, can any of you do that? At the time, I honestly had no idea this was a rare thing. I raise my hand. Teacher, with a smug look, points at me and is gobsmacked when I answer correctly with note and octave. He then figures it's pure luck, so does it again and asks me to face the other way. I answer correctly a second time. Tries it with chords, sequences, and 2 hands worth of notes. Still right every time. It ends with me playing back a short sequence after listening to it blind. And that day I learned that perfect pitch is actually kind of rare. A beginning writer asked some advice about a basic drafting method, so I offered my point of view. Some tough guy decided to butt in and say that what I said was proof that I'm not a real writer, and that it was obvious that I'd never be published. At that time, the 2nd or 3rd book in my trilogy was about to be released. I asked the guy not to tell my editor that I wasn't a real writer. While I was in high school, I was the reigning city fencing champion in both the youth and adult tournaments. My high school decided to do a school-wide fencing unit for phys ed, and the coach they brought in to teach all of the students was my actual coach. During my classes, my coach naturally brought me up to help demonstrate the various moves, but for some reason, one of my classmates didn't understand that I wasn't chosen at random. He started talking crap about how I looked like I didn't know what I was doing, and how he could probably kick my butt in a duel. Now, he actually was pretty good for a guy who'd never fenced before, and the first opportunity to actually have a bout, he decided to have a go at me. I picked him apart and did not give up a single touch, and used the opportunity to practice my parry and ripostes. I admit I took a bit of sadistic pleasure in thoroughly beating him. Afterwards, my coach made a point of congratulating the other guy for doing so well against the city champion, which changed his attitude considerably. There's our second story about an unassuming hero being a master swordsman, just like you see in certain fantasy films. Must have been fun for everyone else there to see a real scenario like this go down. My father-in-law challenged me about the capabilities of DVD. Specifically claimed you could only have widescreen video, not 4x3, on a DVD disc. At the time, I was employed as a DVD author. I authored the very first commercially available feature on Scenarist. I'm literally acknowledged in the first edition of DVD Demystified as an expert. I had already by that time personally authored literally hundreds of DVDs with 4:3 aspect ratio. He knew all of the above at the time, yet still insisted that I was wrong. Oh god, most of 2020 so far has just been this over and over. I'm an infectious disease expert, PhD from a microbiology and immunology program, and suddenly all of my former high school classmates think they know more than me. They watch the news and learn a new vocabulary, and they bestow themselves a doctorate. I've been wrapping my family's Christmas presents since a very young age. It's the perfect activity to focus my crippling perfectionism with my overall anxiety-riddled self to create a beautiful masterpiece that would make anyone think twice about discovering the mysteries beneath the colorful paper and bows. I've always just loved to do it, and my mum was more than happy to not spend hours wrapping presents. Flash forward to the company Christmas party in my late 20s. We're split into teams to compete for random prizes. I'm up for the next game. I had no idea what I'd be doing. I see a big cardboard box, a necktie, wrapping paper, scissors, tape, and a bow. I know what's about to go down, and I'm here for it. It's a blind present wrapping challenge. My competitors start talking about how they can wrap presents fast, and I sit there silently staring down that cardboard box, knowing fully that the crowd is in for a show. Blindfolds go on. We have a partner that isn't blindfolded that's supposed to give verbal directions. Just before the timer starts, I lean over to my partner and say quietly, "Are you ready for this?" And she just says, "What?" Bam. Timer starts, partner tries to give directions at first, and quickly realizes that I'm way ahead of her. Before anyone else can even get their paper cut, I've got my box wrapped, taped, and bowed. I even fold the ends in fancy to have the triangles meet. And that, my friends, is how I earned the most satisfying $10 Starbucks gift card of my life and earned the title of a Wrap Master. My roommate, who took Psych 101 class at a prestigious university, told me, a master's-level therapist, that the movie Split with James McAvoy was an accurate depiction of multi-personality disorder. Ah yes, many often forget that people with multi-personality disorder can spider climb up walls. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I'm no expert, but people never assume I can play pool. I grew up with my parents going to the pub, so as an early teen I'd play a lot of pool and I got pretty good. There's been a number of occasions where I've gotten us a round of drinks or stuck it to some jerk who's hogging the table. Someone once tried to insist that our state didn't sell booze on Sundays. I've spent over a decade working in restaurants, and I'm also an alcoholic, which she knew about but still insisted on arguing with me about it. Well, I'm a veterinarian and I know how to prevent fleas. I get these Karens saying, "My dog is itching and it's not fleas." Okay, but your dog is infested with them. It's not fleas. I'll run a comb and show them hundreds. I empathize with the doctor in Happy Gilmore now. I used to play fighting games competitively all over the world. Never made it to one of the top slots, but I could usually hold my own. One of the best games ever was Super Street Fighter 2. Went to a bar by work one day, and they just so happened to have a SNES set up with SF2. I order a drink, pick random characters, and just mess around for a bit. Some guy comes in and immediately starts bragging to his date that he's the best SF2 player ever. I asked him to play some games against me and offered to buy him a drink if he could beat 2 out of 3. 12 games later, I'm completely hammered, and he finally gives up and leaves. Still don't remember getting home that night. I'm not power level 9000 or even an expert or certified, but there's a specific kind of cargo parachute called a small airdrop training bundle. I can pack those correctly and buy the book in less than 15 minutes. I was challenged by someone who had 5 years experience on me to see who could pack the most in an hour. I had 6 while he was trying to argue with the quality control guy, who'd been packing parachutes for 20 years, over how correct he did step 3. I had a good day beating the guy who just so happened to be the worst rigger in the world. Well, I wouldn't say I'm an expert at push-ups, but I've worked in the fitness industry for 20 years and work out myself pretty regularly. Doing 20 push-ups is nothing to me. I was at a party that was attended primarily by what I would call hipsters. A guy who'd been drinking a fair amount challenged me to 20 push-ups as fast as possible for $20. I won and I got $20. Then another said he'd do the same bet if we went right away. I guess thinking I was kind of tired. I beat him and got another $20. A few minutes later, another guy did the same thing. It was an easy $60. Well, this one's gonna date me, but I was an undergrad when the video game Halo was released. I never really played a lot of video games, but at the time I had a boyfriend who was really into it. We played, like a lot, even went to some college-based tournament games and did well. Fast forward some years later, and my husband and I are at a house party. Someone turns on the Xbox and was looking for a 4th for Halo. My husband volunteers me. The guys were visibly not thrilled, but play along. I wiped the floor with them. Eventually, they decide to team up 3 against me. I still destroyed them. The whole party ended up crowding around us to watch. It was a great night. Haha, yeah, it's funny what comparative experience feels like. I didn't have an Xbox, and I spent most of my after-school time getting absolutely destroyed on Halo by my friend. Then, when we went to a tournament, still feeling like I was bad at the game, I realized that actually I was at least in the upper half of Halo players in our age group. It's funny what perspective can make you feel like. Although it seems like you were on a whole other level, as being able to beat 3 journeyman players, who are all teamed up against you, is pretty good. Pool water treatment isn't very difficult even for the average Joe. Trust me, you don't need to pay someone $100 a month to treat and clean your pool. I love listening to the salespeople at Leslie's, a local chain of pool supply stores, educate me and their other customers. I got into a polite discussion about algae one time and I was told that I was wrong. I explained that I knew what I was talking about. He asked what I did and I responded, industrial water treatment. He's very nice to me when I go into the store now. Me and my buddies in the 7th and 8th grade loved GoldenEye. We had sleepovers where we spent every waking second from 5 p.m. till 9 a.m. the next day playing, with no sleep at all. We were convinced that we were the best, but had no real proof because we were only playing against people in our school. Big fish, small pond kind of scenario. Fast forward about 6 or 7 years, my college holds a GoldenEye tournament. Haven't played it in years, obviously. Well, there was a giant problem. My friends and I had always played with inverted pitch on. The issue was that GoldenEye in multiplayer doesn't let you select different control styles for different players. Everyone has to play with the same control scheme, so I was stuck with my controls being upside down. I still won the tournament. I got absolutely rocked in the Mario Kart tourney, but I had my GoldenEye badge. Okay, I'm being told that I'm a big dummy and you can individually set the controls. So for some reason I wasn't able to in that tournament, but I remember the timed mines round was absolutely bonkers as a result. Journeyman electrician here. Had a guy demanding I can put lights in his house without cans. These were not the canless kind either. He just straight up didn't want to pay for cans. Even bought the lights by pallet on some massive sale. A real cheap idiot who wouldn't listen to anything I said about safety or legality. I walked out and told him good luck with his inspection. So it's the Saturday after Thanksgiving a few years ago, and I'm out with one of my old college friends and her extended family. We'd just graduated the year before. We post up at a bar outside of the game. Everyone's pleasantly mid-afternoon buzzed. Her uncle, whom I hadn't met previously, asked what I do. I hated answering this question in 2017, especially with middle-aged adults, because they would invariably try to start something. At the time, I worked at an immigration law firm. Predictably, as soon as I tell him this, he asks what I think about the wall. I give him my usual answer, bipartisan immigration reform, Gang of 8, yada yada. He tells me not to give him the rehearsed crap, he wants to hear what I really think. I say, oh, I don't really want to get into it, let's just enjoy the game. But he keeps pushing and I've had a couple of beers, so against my better judgment, I engage. This maybe 50-year-old man becomes furious as the discussion carries on because I keep citing court cases and how our immigration system actually works. The kicker is at one point he says, just because you have all these statistics and citations doesn't mean you know any better than me. I just gave up and got another beer after that. Color. It sounds weird, but anytime the color of something comes up and someone tries to correct me. I've been a commercial printing press operator for 20 years. I can spot very subtle differences in colors that most people can't. I am a climatologist. Say no more, fam. It was honestly like a movie. When I was in college, you were limited to only a few guest passes, so it was pretty common to ask people on your floor to sign in friends. So late at night, while we were playing Mario Kart, someone knocked on our door to ask us to sign in their friends. We didn't really feel like going down all those stairs and dealing with them, so we hesitated. That's when he said, if I beat you in Mario Kart, will you sign them in? We of course agreed. Little did he know we all played every day all semester long. He was really convinced he'd beat us. We placed first, second, and third, and he ended up in 12th. We still signed in as friends, though. Not quite this, but I learned piano years ago. I brought a keyboard and learned the first movement of Moonlight Sonata, but it was literally all I could play. I just started a new job as a chef in a fancy hotel. I'd been there maybe a month and was at the Christmas party. I sat at a piano and the head chef pointed at me, laughing and said, "Hey, look at John, you can't play the piano." I thought, I'll just act confident and play the only thing I can, so I was like, "Yeah, I can. I've played for years." And he said, "Oh, really? Play Moonlight Sonata then." It couldn't have gone better. He was gobsmacked, and I've never told anyone there that I was actually crap at piano, except for that one song. Let me see. Krull, the arcade video game. A guy tried to hit on me at a house party by challenging me to a game, but he knew he'd made a mistake when I said, "Sure, I haven't played in a while." It was my boyfriend's house and his game. We still had fun playing, though. Solving a Rubik's Cube. My friend bet me $10 he could solve a cube faster than me. He solved it in 1 minute, me 30 seconds. In college, Mario Super Strikers for the GameCube. I loved my GameCube so much as a kid and actually ended up bringing it to college with me. I had so many people that wanted to play or would smack talk about how good they were, only for me to beat them over and over. I have a friend that I beat 30 times in a row over the course of an afternoon, and he swore he'd never play with me again. 5 years later, and he still hasn't. Okay, so the back end of the comments for this video are just absolute video game superstars. We get it, you proved your parents wrong, it can come in handy one day. Take that, Dad. A friend of mine challenged me when I said the dusty bits on the floor below their air conditioner were because they needed to clean the filter. They insisted that it was ash coming from outside through the air conditioner because of fires that had been going on nearby. It was a split-system AC. I work in HVAC. At least once I explained how their unit worked, they conceded. I have a PhD in genetics, and I've published multiple papers on viral vectors spreading in a large population. Every frickin' anti-vaxxer and COVID conspiracy theorist. I'm so sick of them. Also, when someone I met at a social event found out that I work in a genetics research lab, he asked the following question. If 2 white Americans go to China and have a baby there, will it come out Asian? I was so shocked that I actually spit out my drink. Oh, this happens to me a lot. I had the unique situation of working in manufacturing in China for 7 years. I moved back 3 years ago and constantly have people explain to me why manufacturing could easily come back to the States, and I emphatically tell them that they are frickin' stupid. Female mechanical engineer. My life is pretty much people challenging me on things that I'm an expert on. Cycling. My younger brother has a personal vendetta against me. Tried to tell him riding 100 miles is not easy. He said, "Man, I can do 100 miles." I was like, "Okay, I stay with you the first 50 miles," and he didn't even make it past 10. Ha! How did shy guys finally meet the love of their life? I was sitting in second day of bio class in college. The class had like 100 or more students in it. I liked to get there early to reserve my seat. Was a very shy guy, and my row was always empty except for me, which I didn't mind at all. Anyway, I was sitting there, and I looked over at the far door to watch the students pile in. A girl, obviously on the tennis team, walks in. 10 out of 10. I look at her, she looks at me, and I look away because I didn't want to be awkward. Next thing I know, she's right next to me and asks if the seat next to me is taken. It isn't. She sits down, and I don't know what to do, but I have to do something. I look over and say, "I'm Ben, what's your name?" and put my hand out. I immediately regret the decision because maybe a handshake is too formal. She awkwardly shakes it and gives me her name. I ask how long she's been playing tennis. She doesn't. She's on the golf team, not the tennis team. I feel like an idiot, but I keep trying. She asks a couple of questions about me. I just got back from living in France for a couple of years. I'm half French, and I tell her as such. She's impressed and asks me to say a couple of things in French. More impressed. Class starts. She mentions how she'll need a study buddy to get through this. I catch on. I tell her we should make a study group. She's all for it. I get her number to set the group up, class ends, and we go our separate ways. Next day of bio, I get to class a little later than usual, walk in, and she's in her old spot. She saved my spot. I'm on cloud 9 and never miss a day of bio. We start studying together for exams. Then we start studying together every day. I have a car. I take her out to eat every now and then. She invites me hiking a month later. Just me and her. We go up the mountain to a spot that overlooks the city. She plays my favorite song by Blues Traveler. That's when I fall in love with her. Ask her out on the hike down. She says yes. First kiss. 2 years later, and we're still together. My one apparently hit on me a lot, and eventually got mad and was like, "Do you just not like me or what?" I eventually stammered out an apology and asked her to hang out for Christmas. We've tolerated each other for 6 years this Christmas. Well, my last girlfriend was a friend that I had a crush on. We were playing the dot game, which is where you try to tap the other person's nose and say dot. It leads to a lot of wrestling if you're playing on a couch. I had her pinned down and we were both laughing. And then I just kissed her. Lucky for me, she was thinking, just kiss me already, or else that would have been real bad. I mean, if you're at the dot game stage, kissing is almost guaranteed. Actually, yeah, the narrator didn't know how to feel about this one, as the old just go for it kissing technique can be legitimately problematic. But then again, as that last commenter said, if they've consented to or initiated a game where you're wrestling on the couch, your odds are pretty damn good to begin with. Read the signs, guys. I'd say my boyfriend is more introverted than shy. He and my brother worked together, and my brother asked him to help move a big piece of furniture. He stayed for dinner, we talked, and then I asked him out. He's held on to me tight ever since. Basically, he did some favor and got dinner and a girlfriend out of it. Basically, you did all the work and he's lucky. After drinking 2 bottles of wine, I was talked, against my better judgment, into going to an event at a club with 2 friends. There, I met a beautiful and smiley girl who one of them knew from elsewhere. During the sobering up period, I remembered I dislike people and clubs, so I retreated to the 24-hour cafe and lounge place across the street and just drank tea, where friends and accompanying beautiful smiley girl eventually joined me. She and I talked, and it was great. She wasn't difficult to talk to like everyone else. When we all went our separate ways, we hugged and agreed we should definitely see each other again. After that, we spoke on Facebook, but didn't see each other again for like 3 or 4 months until she said she was coincidentally coming to meet friends near where I live and that this would be a good opportunity to meet up. I later learned these friends were a ruse. We met at a pub and talked for ages about a lot of our favorite things. I asked if she wanted to come stay at my house, and we've been together for the 2 years since. We live together, and she's asleep next to me right now, and is by far the best thing to ever happen to me. I've never been with anyone before her, and was beginning to give up hope. When I was 19, one of my extrovert friends hooked me up with another introvert I would have never met otherwise. We started off exchanging emails. We lived 200 miles apart. This was in 2005, before smartphones with video chat, and before video chat was really even a thing. I had no idea what she even looked like. Our 8th anniversary is Monday, and we're taking the kids to dinner and a movie to celebrate. Did you find out how she looks like? Oh, I'm still too shy to look. She made the first move. The Sicilian defense, an excellent choice. I asked her out over MySpace. Frickin' MySpace. She inexplicably said yes, and we've been together since, well, MySpace was a thing. My current boyfriend is as shy as they come. He won me over by approaching me at a college mixer and just smiling and nodding while I blabbered on and on about the James A. Garfield assassination. Sometimes listening is all you need. I'm the same way with my current girlfriend. She'd never experienced something like that, so when we first started talking, every once in a while she'd throw in some completely off-topic nonsense. I'd ask her what the hell she was talking about, and she'd say something like, "Holy crap, you actually were listening." A little tipple of alcohol helps me become a bit more social, so that helps. I didn't get her, she got me. She went up to me and said, "You're my boyfriend now." And since I'm too shy to say yes or no, I went with it. We've been dating for 6 years now. Ah, kindergarten. I just want you all to know I'm standing here with a notepad for hints on how to finally get a girlfriend. I went through a 2-year period where I became pretty normal. I met her and got married during that time. I was sociable for some reason that I don't understand now. After we got married, I kind of went back to being my old hermit self. This answer is probably not much help. I just broke up with my girlfriend of 6 years. We met because I was making a conscious effort to be social after graduating high school. Unfortunately, I too reverted back to being antisocial, and now I'm single again. You're a lucky man that she's stuck with you. I played the long con. Knew her for like 7 years, visited her on a job interview in late November, moved up to her like 2 weeks later, and married in March. That was 2.5 years ago, and now we have a 6-week-old daughter. It's been a busy few years. I'm awkward as heck, and I just told dumb jokes to make her laugh. I was always there for her, and we went out on a date up to a lake and just talked most of the night. We've been dating ever since, so my advice is just be yourself. She made me so much more confident in myself, and the past 1.5 years has flown by. She called me to wish me well for my birthday and asked if we could hang out to talk. She confessed she's been in love with me for the better part of a year. It's been 3 months since then. I felt the connection instantly. It almost scared me. I couldn't believe good chemistry could be this good. So yeah, I guess I hit a jackpot, is the answer. I wear a fake cast and trick them into helping me load stuff into my van. My only piece of dating advice is to order steak. Always have an extra piece cut and ready to go. Any awkward questions come up, you pop that in your mouth. Gives you a little time to think about your answers. For me, the trick was to be cool with being alone. I found my happiness, worked on improving myself, and eventually women started noticing me. There is definitely something to the whole confidence is attractive thing. I guess my advice is, live your life and don't obsess about being single. Also, going to the gym helps because the better you think you look, the more confidence you project. Yep, narrator chiming in here. I've had massive dry spells in my life where I was just not doing all that great or feeling very good about myself, often trying real hard to meet someone during those times as well. But my best partners have all kind of dropped out of nowhere when I was already doing well, pretty happy and thriving. We just give off a better vibe when we're doing well. Focus on making your life better, sans partner, and whether or not you find one, you will be better off anyway. Oh man, it was my first day in math class. I saw this really pretty, curly-haired girl. She caught my eye and I sat close to her. The teacher ended up being horrible. It was a student teacher. So this girl would ask for help to explain stuff, and I would too after following her lead. Eventually, a group of us were confused enough to where we made a study group, and I still remember how happy I was when I got her number to make plans to study and look over the stuff the teacher didn't explain good enough. I ended up transferring out of that class because the teacher really was just that bad, but we stayed in touch. One night, she had a horrible pain, and her roommates had plans elsewhere, so I took her to the hospital instead of studying, and we bonded on a whole other level. It was like I'd known her for years, like she was instantly my new best friend. And then we just sort of fell for each other after all of the inside jokes and daily help we'd give each other. I know I got really lucky, but it made up for years of bad luck, believe me. I'm a guitar player. They just walk up to me and start talking. That's why I play guitar. That's why we all play, right? He just stared at me a lot, and then I made the first move. That doesn't work for everyone. Believe me, often it has the opposite effect. Somehow managed to convince myself to message her, "Hey, do you want to help me take down our hometown's roving scooter gangs?" And now I'm engaged. It's easy. Just answer thousands of personal ads and eventually you'll get lucky. So there are single Asian women near me. I had a few beers at 1 a.m., went on datehookup.com, clicked on a profile that didn't even have a pic, and messaged her. 5 years together this year, 4 years married, with a 2-year-old daughter. Went from not having a car or job and riding the bus when we were dating, to affording 2 newer cars, and both of us have decent jobs now. Sometimes you just get lucky. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Oh, it wasn't easy. We used to work together, and for 3 months I was asking people at work if this girl I was interested in was single. I asked a whole bunch and never got an answer. Asked my best friend who also worked there at the time, and they told me they didn't know. Took me another month to ask this girl. My friend kept asking if I'd asked her out yet. I had it all planned out. I had a vacation coming up. She worked the Monday night. I went up right before close and bought some crap that I really didn't need, but used it as an excuse. I stayed after and talked to my friend who helped me out. After a while, I started kind of making conversation, acting like I was looking at the schedule, even though it didn't matter to me since I wasn't working. I felt the lump in my throat growing and growing. I knew that if I didn't ask, I probably never would. I felt like my nervousness was showing, and she was probably wondering what this weirdo was doing just creeping around her. I finally got the stones to straight up ask her if she wanted to go for dinner. She looked kind of freaked out and I immediately started to panic. Then she said with a smile, yes. I couldn't believe it, but instead of keeping it inside, I said, really? I still hate myself for that, but I never let her live down her answer. Yeah, why not? She didn't realize it at the time, but that night is quite possibly what saved me. That was 2 years ago and we just got married this past May. I don't regret a single moment of it. Bonus, my friend didn't know that I'd asked her out that night, and they didn't know why at the time, but I gave them a loud high five on the way out. I told them both about it a month afterwards. Tinder. We got coffee, walked around Goodwill, and made out in the back of her car on the first date. Couple of weeks later, and we're in love. It's been 2 years now, no regrets. I formally told her that she was my girlfriend now and that she could start sending me undressed pics if milady felt like it. I haven't heard back from her, so I'm assuming that's a yes? I didn't, I haven't, and most likely I won't. College. This hot redhead walks into the house that I'm sharing with 4 friends. They're all over her trying to chat her up. I ignore her. Later that night, we all get drunk. She passes out in my bed, and when I go to make sure she's okay, she asks me to stay there with her. We had some hot adult fun times and played the V-word game, where you rename the movie or video game or book titles to be lady parts themed, like Harry Potter and the Deathly Vajayjays, or Lawrence of Laby. Oh, you get the picture. We stayed up all night laughing, and the next morning I took her for coffee and donuts. Then, 2 years later, we got married. Yeah, I'm still single and waiting. Tinder of all places. I mean, look, I know it has the stereotype, but I firmly believe that you'll find what you're looking for on these apps. I was on it on college, and there was definitely ample opportunity for hookups. Last year, I downloaded again and started meeting a lot of really interesting people. One girl was going for her PhD at Caltech, another was working for a non-profit that helps cancer survivors. One girl was in town for the weekend and was looking for a weekend date, and I couldn't say no. My point is that if you're looking for a relationship, you'll find it. And if you're looking for hookups, you'll find them too. Well, Wart was all like, I'm going to rule subcon, and then Princess Peach comes along and I says to her, oh wait, shy guys, not shy guys. I was a 22-year-old kissless virgin. I self-published a zine in the mid to late 90s. I put an article in there about how I was lonely, looking for companionship. Some zine friends recommended me to one of their real-life friends. We were married within 3 years, and it lasted for almost 15 years. She's great, and the end was nobody's fault. We were just on different paths. You know, every now and again, the narrator begins to worry that he's too terminally online. Then he gets a comment like this and has to actually search what the frick a zine is, and is reminded that aside from the work he does on his voiceover stuff, he's actually pretty clueless about the internet at large. I'm glad that you and your arty, booky, magazine co-author managed to find happiness for that long. And no, I'm still not entirely sure what a zine is. When I was in high school, I was extremely shy. When I moved to a new town, I saw a girl in my homeroom who was very cute and interesting looking. I had a thing for alt girls at the time, and still do, and she had purple hair and was super artsy. I basically stalked her by finding her live journal and reading every post she made. I learned a ton about her this way, as creepy as it sounds. I learned that she really liked books, so I started bringing in weird books on philosophy that I left out in plain view. She started asking me about the books, and I would casually show interest in things that I knew she was super into. Obviously, we really hit it off and would talk on AIM every day. She eventually confessed that she had a crush on me, so I reciprocated, and we dated for around 4 months. First girl I did the deed with, but that's another ridiculous story. Now, many years later, I met my wife at the gym by pretending to need fitness advice. So my answer is still the same. Deception. Well, I don't know about you other guys, but I'm just pretty. Well, I didn't meet a girl this way. I got a boyfriend. There's a lot of guys in MMOs. I don't know if we're quite boyfriend or girlfriend yet, as we've only had one date, but she's a friend of a friend and we met at a gathering. I really hope we become a thing because she's pretty awesome. She's a cat lady. I told her I've been bitten by a tiger. All downhill from there. Marrying her this Friday. I handed her a note so it could do all the talking for me when I tried to ask her out, and thus began our long and awkward relationship. She's great, most of the time. Please send help. I asked her out to a movie, and later she told me she agreed to because it was so pathetic it was kind of cute. Me and a buddy were in high school, PE, bullcrapping around, when suddenly he goes, "Follow me." Then runs up to this girl and smacks her on the butt and runs for it. She looked at me in such surprise, shocked. I told her it wasn't me, but she didn't believe me, so the next couple of days we smacked each other in the halls. We started hanging out and then I asked her out. We dated for 2.5 years and broke up a year ago. Almost exactly a year, in fact. My technique is to be the more attractive wingman. I'm not straight, but I met my husband online where I'm less shy. He's a complete social butterfly, so he took over once we met in person. And now we're married. Fake confidence. If you fake it long enough, it turns into actual confidence. Kinda wild. I was in a mutual meetup group at a happy hour at a local bar and restaurant. I noticed her shooting me glances more than twice throughout the night, but didn't act. She messaged me afterwards asking if I wanted to get to know her. I said sure and asked her out for a drink. And the rest is history. I met the love of my life by being shy. She took me home and rode me like the Wild West. She said she likes to take charge, but only in bed. I have not told her that I'm gay yet. What? That's gonna go down terribly. You better make a clean break out of there ASAP if there's no emotional connection. It was a joke, guys. I'm straight. Hey, I'm the girlfriend of the shy guy in question. Guy was max-level introverted. He was terrified and unsure and just going along with the flirts that I was sending his way. And that was the exact right thing to do. He put himself in a social situation, and I showed up to consume him. He had the social awareness to know when I was hitting on him, and just went along with it. I did most of the heavy lifting. Hey, you're cute. Let's talk for an hour about Warhammer 40k. We should talk more about Space Marines at another place. Okay, yes, I am touching your chest, But my dude was excellent in being aware of my hit-ons and responding to them, despite the fear that was very obviously there. I like taking control. I find it really, really flattering when a guy is scared of me. My guy was terrified, like virgin terrified, and all the anxiety and self-defeating thoughts and everything were attractive to me. I took all of that fear as a compliment and used it to drive my flirts until, whoops, it's 5 years later and he's met my grandparents. Everything flowed from that single point, and that point was accepting that this is happening, let's just go with it. Shy guys, your fear is adorable. Women will respond. Sometimes we're strong and we'll want to drag you off to play arcade games and teach us how to dominate as immortal Necron overlords. Learn, adapt, accept. Just go with it. I had to get our high school librarian to introduce us. By sheer coincidence, the librarian was friends with both of us, so it was easy. My desired girlfriend thought I was a geek. 30 years later, 22 married, she still thinks I'm a geek, especially with my new Star Trek Bluetooth communicator badge. Well, my wife scoped me out. She thought I was cute. Found my nerdy engineering student aura real hot, I guess. I drove her to her folks' place for Thanksgiving. They live 15 miles from my siblings, and we hit it off. Our official first date was going to a book signing for Words of Radiance by the incredible Brandon Sanderson. I paid her 2,000 pesos. One of my best friends was dating a girl who was rooming with a therapist-to-be. The therapist-to-be had previously roomed with a shy girl. The therapist-to-be psychoanalyzed both of us and said we'd be a good fit. Me and Shy Girl have been married 1.5 years. That therapist is real good. I summoned every ounce of charisma and blind courage in my crappy body and asked her out to dinner. It went well, dated for 1.5 years. So I didn't get a girlfriend, so I can't say, but once in my Spanish class, I used to sit with one dude and 2 girls who I got along with. Every now and then, after class, all 4 of us would go get coffee before heading back home. So I guess I got on pretty well with one of the girls, because little by little she started being more touchy and closer, until one day she asked me, "When are you going to ask me out?" I would have asked her out right there on the spot, but I had too many unresolved issues with myself, and I basically just got cold feet and left. I kinda regret it every now and again. What can you do that screams, "I make terrible financial decisions"? Oh, we've been dating for 3 months. Of course, let's join bank accounts. You know those ads on Craigslist that are trying to sell a car for exactly what they paid for it? Yeah, those. Take over my payments, please. I used to work at GameStop. I had a customer that bought a PlayStation because a particular exclusive game came out for it. Then they'd trade the system and game back in to buy an Xbox when a new exclusive came out for that about a month later, and would go back and forth trading the respective consoles and games in every few months. I tried to convince him just to own each system and buy the games for each when they release, because he was losing so much money doing what he was doing. His response was that he couldn't afford to buy both at the same time. I didn't have the brightest customers. I worked at a store called Vintage Stock. It's a lot like GameStop. We had people that did that for us too. We were in the same strip mall as GameStop, and we paid out less cash than they did. A guy came in saying he was playing our system by buying our cheap crap and selling it to GameStop, like buying a used PlayStation 4 from us for like $300 and selling it to GameStop for like $100 instead of to us for $80. Like, you didn't make $20, you spent $200, dude. What the frick? Buying something really expensive like a motorcycle or a nice rifle, and then deciding you're tired of it and reselling it for half the price only a week later. I knew a guy who did exactly that, and it was astonishing. It's like, dude, you just lost thousands. Introduce me to this guy. We're into the same stuff, and I love a good deal. When you ask them how much they paid for something, and they only know how much it costs them in monthly payments. This is a great example. I didn't realize how many people must do this. I bought a truck years ago, and after test driving it, I told the salesperson that I'd buy it if, after my trade-in, the loan on the new truck was $10K or less. He agreed. They wrote up my paperwork, and they said, "Hey, the payment is only X amount. That's less than what you were looking for. Isn't that great?" So I replied, "Yeah, but what's the total loan amount?" "Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look." So he digs through the documents, and the loan was like $12K. I pretty much told them to get bent or take $2K off that loan amount. They ended up dropping it down to the $10K I'd told them I was willing to pay. I'm assuming, however, that many people wouldn't have given the loan amount a second thought after hearing the payment was lower than they were expecting. This is why the narrator runs all of his biggest financial decisions past other, smarter humans before he commits. I'm too dumb to be trusted with this sort of thing, but also smart enough to know that I'm too dumb. If a deal seems too good to be true, check it with a smart person. And when salespeople offer you something like this, put your hands over your ears and sing loudly. So, I worked at a grocery store for 8 years, and the one thing I saw a lot of, unfortunately, was people putting food back for cigarettes when they had kids. We didn't sell lottery tickets or alcohol, but other stores in town did, and I heard the same stories from them. I worked at a store that people could sell their nerdy stuff, like games, comics, old toys, and movies in, for a little bit of cash or for even more store credit. Too often, you'd have people that reeked of crystal or cigarettes selling their kids' movies. When I'd tell them that for their collection of 10 children's movies, I'd give them $4 cash or $6 store credit, they'd usually say something like, "Give me the cash. I gotta get smokes and I don't get paid for a few more days." I'm like, what the frick? It just makes me so sad to know that a child is being raised into that. I am a loan officer. A guy called in, 18, fresh out of high school, first job, Pizza Hut, been at it 3 months. Needed a car. Wanted us to finance it. He was calling from the Maserati dealership. Jesus Christ! I know a guy who makes $80K a year, military pension, couple of private pensions, and has a Porsche for the weekends, and he still thinks Maserati is too expensive. When someone emphasizes how much they saved versus how much they spent. Look what I got. Originally 25 grand, but I got it for 5 grand. I saved 20 grand. No, you spent 5 grand. In Western Australia, it looks like this. Get laid off by the mining company that was initially paying you well, specifically because it wasn't a secure position, but never mind that. They'd already taken out like $600K loan on a house, an $80K loan on a sick V8 Commodore, plus another $10K putting in performance cams and straight through exhaust so you can pull mad skids, and this is all on the justification that I'll be able to smash those loans out in a couple of years on the salary, eh? Oh frick. Got laid off. What do I do now? Oh, what's that? Tickets to Bali, a $300 return? Better take the family for a booze-fueled cheap crap buying bonanza. That's fine, we'll just remortgage the house. Dead frickin' easy. I used to live paycheck to paycheck. Now I live direct deposit to direct deposit. Cadillac Escalade that never has more than a quarter tank of gas. 20 grand in credit card debt at nearly 20% APR. I used to know a guy who was renowned for making bad decisions in general. To be fair, he was funny and had a heart of gold, he just wasn't a logical thinker. He never had any savings, he was always buying his girlfriend of the month pretty or expensive things, and always mooching off his mum. One of the more flawed decisions that always stuck with me was when his car broke down. It was a piece of junk, so it was bound to happen. No biggie. He was feeling pretty blue because, as well as a collection of other things that had happened around the same time, largely through his own choices. So, he decided that in order to finally become a winner, he needed to look and feel like a winner. And do you know what makes you look and feel like a winner? Owning a brand new Chrysler. He was so excited about it, he could feel good things coming his way already. He picked the one he wanted, it was 70 grand Australian dollars. He spoke to the dealer and organized when he was going to come in and do the paperwork. Everything was looking great for him. Then, when he went to the dealership to sort it all out, it turned out he hadn't been in his current job for long enough, so the loan, which he'd elected to do through the dealership, couldn't be approved. He came back looking pretty defeated, but in my opinion, being declined that loan was one of the luckiest things to happen to him. That man should not be in charge of his own money. When they're always broke, but they always have green herb at the same time. Carrying forward debt from your last car loan into your current car loan. Unwilling to write down what they wrote checks for. My boss's charity just sent out the legally required receipts for charitable donations. Each receipt says, "Thank you for your donation of X amount to charity name." It's so that people can list it as a charitable donation on their taxes, so we have a list in the event of an audit. I fielded no fewer than a dozen calls this week along the lines of, "What's this receipt for? I didn't write a check." And nobody's polite about it either. They're all in full-blown panic mode. I have photocopies of their checks with the check numbers, which I send them. And suddenly they remember that check they wrote all of a week ago, but somehow never wrote down in their checkbook or whatever system they use. Seriously, people, pay attention. Asking your friends on Facebook for $250 to pay your bills, then posting the pics the next day of you at the movie theater with $40 in snacks. I have a friend who asks to borrow more than she actually needs so that she can still go out and party. For example, she might only need $200, but she'll ask for $300 so that she has an extra $100 to go buy booze and party with. And a lot of you are asking if she pays back. She's always paid me back. I'm not sure about the many others, but I wouldn't be surprised. But her payments are always late to me. It took her nearly 3 months, 3 months after the date she'd told me she'd be able to pay me back the $100 I lent her. I've also witnessed her borrow money from someone to pay back someone else. I have reason to believe that she doesn't pay some of her family back like her mum or brother because they always give it to her no matter what. She always borrows money from people. It's a regular, weekly thing for her. Just bought 24-karat gold-plated playing cards. They were only $12 on Groupon, but it does look bad. I have a friend who has 95 grand in student loan debt, 23 grand credit card debt, and a 50 grand wedding on the horizon. Her dad pays for her school loan. He's paying for the wedding too. The original budget was 30 grand, got raised to 50 grand. Here's the kicker. He said, "I'll give you 50 grand for a down payment on a house or 50 grand for your wedding." And she picked the wedding. Infuriating. And yes, her dad will absolutely end up paying the down payment on her future house. It makes me just so… more money than sense. Yeah, it sure is easier to feel contempt for people who are that mix of rich, stupid, and careless with other people's money. At least when it's someone who's been stuck in a bit of a hole their entire lives, you can put it down to ignorance or maybe a lack of opportunity. But yeah, this money could have changed so many lives. Setting up a GoFundMe account to get their Facebook friends to pay for their wedding instead of opting for a simpler wedding, or having a longer engagement, or eloping now and having the big party later, while still going out to dinner every other night and taking expensive trips. Lifted truck with balding tires. Okay, this one might get ranty because I just need to vent it out. One of my colleagues is probably the nicest man on the planet. He's kind, considerate, and loyal. You couldn't write a movie script for a better person. No Rhodes Scholar, but very hardworking and liked by everyone. Almost every person in his life takes horrendous advantage of him. I can tell that he deeply fears being rejected by his loved ones and craves their approval and acceptance, but it has crossed a line. They have a joint income of over $150K, yet they're circling the drain in debt and can barely pay any bills. They live in credit. His wife is usually a decent person, but when she says jump, he asks how high. This has resulted in numerous luxury shopping trips, her mother moving in and being a complete leech on their lives, vacations, and they just had to buy 2 brand new vehicles last year with all the bells and whistles. They can barely pay the mortgage and the house is a mid-sized fixer-upper. At least every week or two he comes in and I force out of him the latest thing they spent way too much money on. Almost everything is in payment installments, even their utility bills. He pays for 5 cell phones. He usually can't drive his truck because there's no gas in it. In the summer we have barbecues every week for about $3 to $5. Hot dogs are cheaper than burgers. And there are times he just doesn't have the $3. A 45-year-old man with a 6-figure income that doesn't have $3 2 days after payday. Thankfully, his kids are clueless that there's a problem, as it should be. They're kids and don't need adult problems. They get whatever they need from school. My concern is that one day the bubble will burst. Repo companies will come in, creditors are calling, and they're precariously close to the edge at all times. All I can do is encourage him to get therapy and learn to say no. But I can't force it. Okay, update. Lots of good advice from people coming in, good to hear from other people on the other side of the fence, and it's giving me a new perspective. His youngest 2 kids are pre-teens. Not sure I want to tell them about the magnitude of the problem, just let them enjoy a few years of being kids. Second update, for frick's sake. I was chatting with him at the end of the workday. Apparently they're using the tax refund they assume they're getting, and the whole family is going to Mexico for spring break. Frick. I told him to sell his truck or find a cardboard box to live in. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Complaining on Facebook that you can't afford the $200 it will take to cover your kids' school supplies this year, but also posting a daily pic of your Starbucks drink. $800 car, $2,000 rims. Trying to pay 2 mortgages, but you also spend hundreds of dollars on video game loot boxes and virtual cards for a mobile phone game. Treating the limit on their credit card as money that they already have. For example, they have a $5,000 limit on a new card and immediately think they could buy with $5,000, and then opening a new credit card when they run out of that $5,000. I used to be a cashier at a store which had their own credit card that could only be used at that store. Most of the credit applications I processed were either denied or given very low credit limits, because those cards attract people with the worst financial decisions. Get your tax refund and completely forget about the last 11 months of poverty you just experienced while you talk yourself into a brand new 65-inch TV that you'll inevitably pawn off to pay your water bill. Maybe I'm being too specific here. Buying a rundown hotel with bedbugs, mold, and a broken pool, and then spending 27 grand on new signs with over half your savings. Hotel Impossible episode that I saw recently. In my part of the world, it's the newly hired kids on the oil rigs. When the market is booming, they go out and buy a truck with a $1,000 monthly payment, then buy a house with a $3,000 monthly payment. Then, when the market drops, they lose it all and their credit ends up ruined. So it's harder to find a decent car or place to live. Okay, I'm copying in this golden oldie from the finance Reddit. I'm in high school and money was stolen from my bank account. I need help now. I'm in high school, I just finished my frosh year, and I'm supposed to go on a big trip this summer. I didn't have any money and my parents didn't want me to have a lot of cash anyway, so they set me up with my first bank account and put $1,000 in it. It came with an ATM card and some checks. The checks were really cool. I never had anything like them before. But I was kind of sad because I didn't have anything to use them for. I had a lot of friends over last week and I showed them the checks, and they all thought they were really cool too. I got the idea that I could give my friends some souvenir checks. I told them that these were only souvenirs. We had a blast that day. I was acting like a billionaire and making jokes, asking people how much money they needed, and then writing them a fake check. I kept telling them that it was all fake and they couldn't cash the checks. Because some of my friends are idiots, I got a text today from one guy saying he tried to cash a check and the bank wouldn't give him money. I told him, "What the frick are you doing trying to cash the check after I told you not to?" I went to the bank this afternoon to sort it out and I asked them how much money was in the account. They said that there was nothing left in the account and that I owed them money for fees. I felt like I was going to faint or throw up. So I got out of there as fast as I could. I didn't explain the situation to them. I need to fix this without my parents finding out. Do I talk to the police first or do I talk to the bank first about the stolen money? I'm in Michigan, by the way. Update. Okay, thanks everyone for the advice. I still feel like I should try going to the cops, but every time I wanted to, I kept getting nervous and chickened out. That lasted about a whole day, and then it turns out my dad got a call from the bank and he went absolutely ape crap. They stopped all the checks and took my checkbook away. I have no idea if they got the money back from my friends. My dad left for work for a week and he's not talking to me. I probably won't see him for a while because I leave for my trip this week and I'll be gone for a while. I'm only getting $300 for the trip this time instead of the $1,000, but I guess that makes sense that I'm punished somehow. Biggest lesson learned? Don't mess around with the checkbook, or if you need to, make sure to write void on the checks. Well, we can give you the benefit of the doubt and put that extreme blunder down to your relative youth. Your parents probably should have given you some sort of talk about how to use a checkbook, but even then, folks, checks have signatures and stuff on them and they're more or less a contract that you're giving the other party that money. Don't be silly with them, he says in 2025 when nobody uses checks anymore. Rent-a-center. Heard a coworker talking about their new bong and she showed me a picture of it on a table with burn marks. I asked why it was so burnt and she said, "Rent-a-center's on my butt because I haven't paid yet, but I don't want to. I shouldn't have to pay for a burnt table." I replied, "Why would they even rent it to you like that?" And she says, "Well, they're buttholes. I told them I burnt it and they won't even give me a discount or anything. They want more." This witch's new glass pipe cost more than a table I now own off Craigslist, and she's $200 in debt for a table that she can't even keep. I still think about that interaction maybe twice a week. When you're part of a multi-level marketing company and you, quote, own your own business. Bonus points for using guilt. In college, I was always behind on my rent because I'd spend all of my money on green herb and Italian cheese bread from Little Caesars. I'd get super baked, get the munchies, and order an Italian cheese bread. This was a daily thing for years, and I eventually got evicted. I must have spent close to 50 grand on Mary J and Italian cheese bread by my sophomore year. Anyways, that's not my answer. My sister owns a Coach purse. Eating out for lunch every single day and complaining about how poor or broke you are. No crap, Sandra, was that peanut and chicken kale salad with a side of pasta and extra bakery treat really worth it? Brand new car, no savings, putting things on credit because they don't have money for it. Buying things you don't really need just because it's on sale. And to clarify, I'm talking about non-necessity items. Food, hygiene products, and stuff are a good idea to buy when it's on sale, even if you don't need them at the moment. Questioning you on savings. When you let a friend know how much you have saved and they ask you why you aren't spending more, because if I spent it, I wouldn't have any saved. That's how frickin' savings work. Recently got in an argument with a friend about this. They accidentally saw my bank statement. My fault, I forgot to put it away before they came to my place. Since they discovered what I have in savings, they're always going back to it when I refuse an activity because I find that activity too expensive. I'm saving to pay for driving lessons and then buy a new car. To me, this money isn't mine. It's the dealerships and driving instructors, so I can't spend it. I even tried to explain that to them that it's to pay for future debts, like credit and reverse, because sometimes weird stuff works, and they still don't understand the concept. When someone rents an apartment in a crap part of town, but drives a very expensive car with a stereo setup that you can hear, nay, feel from half a mile away. A guy that I worked with, he sold his phone to pay his rent. He got like $40 for it. Spent the next month without a phone, unable to do business properly because he didn't have a way for people to contact him. He told me he was short on rent and living check to check every month. Later, he told me he plans on taking out a $4,000 loan. $2,000 of it were to buy an old car he liked, and the other $2,000 was to revamp it. He decided he wanted to start breeding pit bulls, so he paid $300 for a pit bull that then didn't mate with his female and was later run over. He decided to buy 2 Indian ringnecks, birds, just because. He wanted a pet and then had to buy a proper cage and toys, and now has to buy bird food and generally do upkeep on them. He later sold one to cover his rent. He also told me multiple stories about how whenever he came up with some extra cash, he'd spend it by the next day. He was proud of this too. He told me how he once got $100 from a family member and then used it within the same night to have a steak dinner and go out for dessert afterwards. When customers would leave him tips, he'd use it to buy takeout food that night. He bought a cat. Full stop. And when he eventually got a phone, he bought one for about $500, which was more than his paycheck. He told me he once wanted to give his wife money, but she told him to keep it because she didn't want to spend it, so he literally just threw it away. Those people who never buy groceries and buy every meal and snack as they please. Anytime I see someone who makes less than $25,000 a year buy a brand new car rather than a well-cared-for used one, I judge them just a bit. I work at the bank. Literally 95% of people's expenses come from food and eating out. Now, that doesn't mean that someone is necessarily financially illiterate, but by simply making their own food and getting a coffee machine, most people can save the majority of their paychecks. Also, having a credit card that offers no rewards. There's so many with no annual fee. Get one of those instead. Full-time students on financial aid who buy Starbucks every single morning, and not just coffee, it's always lattes and frappuccinos and crap. What stupid question earned someone in your class the dunce cap? In class, we were discussing the hole in the ozone layer. Some girl just blurts out, "Oh, that's the hole that the space shuttle flies through, right?" Wait, so like the British were fighting for England? This was during a Western civilizations course. We were talking about the moon in our 10th grade class, and this girl goes, "Is there still a moon?" The teacher's just like, what? "Do we still have a moon?" And the whole class was silent. Biology teacher says, "Look at the person sitting next to you. You share 99% of your DNA with them." Student goes, "Oh my god, is that why you did the seating chart this way?" That's stunningly hilarious. I can't even feel like facepalming like with the rest of these. Just, oh my god. The amount of credit that guy was willing to give his teacher? Wow. In my 10th grade history class, we were talking about when George Washington had 4 bullet holes in his coat jacket and 2 horses shot out from under him. So the teacher asked if anybody knew which battle this happened in, and this girl in my class raises her hand and says, "Vietnam." I was honestly impressed with how stupid she was. We were learning about the events leading up to World War II at Hebrew school in 6th grade. The teacher said, "The Jews were killed by the thousands." And I crap you not, a girl in class asked, "Who are the thousands?" Is a walrus an animal? I had to explain to basically 75% of a science class in high school that ants were in fact animals. They didn't believe me, so I had them go to the teacher. They were shocked bugs were in fact animals. I think a lot of people get confused between an animal and a mammal. I've heard a lot of people who say fish aren't animals or lizards aren't animals as well, so there's obviously some lapse in education there. Somebody in my class once asked if the plural to moose was meese, to which one girl replied, "Mooses aren't even real, why does it matter?" And I will never forget the look on the teacher's face, which was just the vibe of pure loathing. Well, let's be fair to him, it's not often that you're drastically confronted with your failure as an educator. It can't be easy for that guy. During my sophomore year of high school, I was in human anatomy. We were talking about how baby's gender is determined, and a girl asked, "If two lesbians have a baby, does it automatically come out a girl?" She was dead serious. Topic question was, how would you survive without water if stranded in the middle of the ocean? And this girl in class says, "Oh, that's a dumb question. I'd just put the ocean water in a cup, and then the salt would just evaporate." Probably the most vivid moment I remember from all of high school. Wait, volcanoes are real? I thought they were just made up. This was a high school freshman, by the way. High school chemistry class, we were working on a lab where we had to make little squares on a piece of plastic to perform tests in, and the squares had to have 2 centimeter long sides. This kid at my lab table, who'd already proven to be not so bright in class many times beforehand, got our teacher's attention and then asked what a centimeter was. After the teacher thoroughly explained what a centimeter was and where exactly to find them on the ruler in front of him, the student turned to us and said, "I still don't understand the centimeter thing." I'm a high school teacher. We were discussing if you would be a different person if your parents named you differently. A clearly green herb medicated student finds out I have a first name and is shocked, then proceeds to ask, "Wait, Mrs. Milkweed, what's your last name?" College sociology class. I don't remember how it came up. A girl wanted to know whether the Earth is a planet. Back in my high school history class, we were discussing the Vietnam War, and I raised my hand and asked, "Who's Agent Orange?" thinking it was a person. Astronomy class test review with about 500 students, discussing what wavelengths of light make it to the Earth's surface from the sun. A girl raised her hand and asked, "Where does the visible light go at night?" Completely seriously. The professor, in shock, replied, "The other side of the Earth." In my world history class, did food exist back then? I feel like this question had to have just come out wrong. There is absolutely no way that this was a legitimate question, and if it was, life must be very hard for that poor person. Is Australia in Europe? And no, the boy who asked this question did not mean Austria, he meant Australia. He said it 3 times. I was in a history class in community college and we were discussing New York City's role in the Revolutionary War. The teacher had been referring to the English as the British and the English interchangeably, and after a while one kid raised his hand and asked, "Are the British and the English on the same side? Because I always thought the Revolutionary War was America versus Britain versus England." And the kid was dead serious. It was a 100 level class, but come on, seriously? I was in a class once when this girl, in the middle of a lecture, interrupted by pointing to the map on the wall that had America in the center, asking why there were 2 Russias, one on each side of the world. That particular part of the world had to be divided to each side to accommodate the US's central positioning on that map. This was college, mind you. A girl in high school earth science class felt compelled to ask the following: where does the sun go at night? How many seconds are in a meter? In my high school earth science class, we were talking about the origin of the moon. One girl asks, "Did people live on the moon back then?" "So, do you speak like Portuguese?" in response to me telling a girl in her mid-20s that I was from Portland, Oregon. This happened today, and it hurts to think about. So, is Alaska a state, or are you just messing with me? I mean, I know someone who thinks there are 52 states. There are 50 states including Alaska and Hawaii, which means there are 52. And he continued this belief even after being proven wrong. Teacher said, "Your essay needs to be 1,000 words. A student immediately put their hand up. Is a semicolon a word? I'm like, is illegal good or bad? I always get them confused. The same girl was asked on a health test to name 3 common bedroom transmissible diseases and said, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, needles, and downstairs fluids. This girl got into university. Is Mars a country? I mean, I hear they import some good chocolate from Mars. Freshman in bio at college. Having to do some simple stoichiometry for finding out how much of a particular chemical is produced in some cycle, I can't remember which one. Wait, 0.5 and half are the same thing? Wait, what? Jesus Christ, no wonder I failed every equation I've done since the 7th grade. I thought this was going to be a video on stupid people, not things that even very smart people like me don't know. We were in Year 9 chemistry and were discussing things like how everything kinda can become a solid if you go below a certain temperature. This one kid, who was the top of the class in chemistry and physics, sat there pondering, thinking about this stunning revelation. Solid air? Solid helium? In the end, he raises his hand with the stunned look of someone who had just discovered the Higgs boson and asks the life-changing question. Does that mean, like, can you get solid water? It was me. Girl in my 12th grade French class once asked, "Why would I want to go to another country when Paris is in America?" 9th grade English teacher was collecting food and stuff to send it to Japan after the tsunami, namely rice. A girl raised her hand and asked if it was to soak up all of the water. The teacher's look of disappointment could be felt down to her soul. We had a Native American speaker come to my world religions class one day. He spoke to us about how missionaries came to his reservation and nearly destroyed their culture and livelihood. He brought up how depressing and difficult it is to live in the US. Then a girl raises her hand and asks, "Well, if you don't like it here, why don't you just leave and go to a different country?" We were discussing forest fires that were going on somewhere in the Midwest at the time, and a girl asked, "How can the fires keep burning for more than one day? Do they start back up again every morning?" She literally thought the fires only burn in the daytime. This was in a college class. In a life skills class, and we'd just finished watching the horror show that is the assortment of slides showing different transmissible diseases. The teacher proceeds to show us how to put a Johnny on what can only be described as a banana-themed marital aid. After he'd finished, he solemnly asks if anyone has any questions. At first, no hands go up as everyone in the room is in voiceless agreement that the sooner this ordeal is over, the better. Suddenly, I see a hand slowly raise itself. It's attached to the really weird Asian kid. We all had one. His words, while bizarre and cause for extreme condemnation, cut through the awkwardness like a hot knife through the lubricant on slide 4. Where can I get one of those banana things from? We had a very serious, pretty uninformative life skills class going on. We did a section on gay bedroom activities, and it's clear the teacher isn't really comfortable and all the kids are kind of blushing and giggling. Finally, at the end of class, teacher asks if there are any questions. A kid raises his hand and, with a totally straight face, says, "I heard if 2 gay guys are doing the deed and the one in front toots, the other one blows up." I've never seen a classroom descend into chaos that quickly. Another one in health class, grade 10, guest speaker talking about oxytocin. Explains oxytocin is the love hormone that allows you to form a connection with another person. And a kid asks, "So when you tickle your pickle, do you fall in love with yourself?" And I immediately lost it, laughing so hard. Then the kid threatened to fight me. It was a good day. But wait, aren't Canadians from Canada? In a graduate-level computer science class during a lecture on memory allocation, "I'm sorry, what's a byte?" You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. High school. Aren't the Greeks and Romans the same thing? No. Oh, awkward. Goes back to playing Plants vs. Zombies on his phone. But if evolution is true, why don't squirrels give birth to chipmunks? I broke my pencil in half upon hearing that particular gem. Second semester of Spanish, prepping for the midterm. Teacher says, "Now is the time to ask any questions you're unsure of." Girl in the front row goes, "Is there a difference between el and la?" The teacher just didn't know what to do. "So, were the dinosaurs before or after the Greeks?" Guys, this girl had never gone to church in her whole life, and we were taught that the Earth is more than 6,000 years old or whatever. Massachusetts public schools for the win. This was a 10-question open notes take-home quiz in my college sociology class. Some girl asked, "Am I going to fail this test because I got half the questions wrong?" The professor's reaction was essentially just the emoji angry face. I was in 8th grade. A kid asked what Thomas Edison did during the Revolutionary War. That kid wasn't too bright. These 2 gems came from the same person. Is a 20-minute shower long? And is Egypt a religion? We were talking about galaxies and how they form, and as the teacher was talking about how they form, one girl slowly raises her hand. She's asked some stupid crap before, so the teacher calls her name with a tangible amount of reluctance and dread, and this girl asks, "If you throw a peanut out into the universe, will it eventually become a galaxy of its own?" The teacher had a hard time trying to stay nice to her after that question. We had two guys from the University Student Association come into our chemistry lecture promoting an event, and they had free tickets to give away, so one of them tried to come up with a chemistry-related question. He came up with, "How many atoms in hydrogen?" The lecturer had to explain to this guy that hydrogen was an atom. He meant how many atoms in hydrogen, like how many atoms in a water molecule, the human body, or a badger. In college intro to astronomy class, the girl up front responded with 2 miles when the professor asked the class for the diameter of the Earth. I'm fairly certain any end-to-end measurement of our university exceeded 2 miles. The entire class laughed at her, which is what she deserved. Maybe she was just more used to the metric system. But yeah, even the hardest proponent of kilometers would know that the conversion to miles isn't roughly a 6,500th. What's the difference between fish and mammals? That's the final year of university, biology major in a class called Vertebrate Evolution. Everyone I tell this story to says it makes them feel a little happier. In middle school history, we were watching a film on Lewis and Clark. The narrator said something like, "And there the explorers stopped and drank from the ice-cold water." One of the guys in my class asks aloud, "Did they know what ice was back then?" I asked him if this was before or after the Great Ice Age. My friend, a teacher, had a 15-year-old girl ask him who the current president was. In a big hall sociology class, we were learning about social mores. A student asked, "Is that what the song's about?" What song?" "When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's a more?" Entire class was staring in stunned silence at this new stupidity. Then the professor does the kid the biggest solid I've ever seen by saying, "Very funny." But then the student wouldn't drop it and says he wasn't joking. Professor says, "Trust me, you're joking," and the class is in uproarious laughter. So, what was the homework? This was less than 5 seconds after the homework was announced and the professor wrote it on the board. Every gosh darn class. High school freshman history class. The class was watching a movie about the events leading up to the outbreak of World War II. During the film, a shot from a newsreel featuring a fat, bald Asian man waving to the camera is shown. At this moment, a girl in the class asks loudly, "Is that the name of the leader of the Third Reich?" And the room goes silent. The teacher pauses the film from his seat at his desk, walks to the front of the class, in front of the TV screen, and stands there. He looks to the girl, an emotionless stare on his face. He stays there for a moment, then he casts his gaze to the floor, shakes his head, and turns to walk back to his desk. The video is then resumed without comment. My girlfriend student teaches. She was explaining to her 7th graders some of the basic rules, including water is the only beverage allowed in the classroom, no soda, no tea, no energy drinks, only water. And some kid asked her, "What about invisible Kool-Aid?" Like, not even joking, just straight up serious. I think he still gives her nightmares. Halfway through the semester in my linear algebra class, we were solving some system, and a guy seemed absolutely astounded that you could add 2 equations together. I believe his exact words were, "You can do that? Just add equations together?" Keep in mind that most people learn how to do that in 10th grade. It's even funnier because he was actually a really smart guy. I'm just not sure if everything was working in his head on that day, though. Grade 11 university-level biology. A girl kind of known for being occasionally dim explains, "Wait, people actually die from acquired immune deficiency syndrome?" Needless to say, all of us, including the teacher, died a little inside that day. And also, before anyone says it, I do know that people usually die from infections that the weakened immune system caused by acquired immune deficiency syndrome allows, but she wasn't referring to that. She was shocked that this thing she kept hearing about was actually a death sentence to so many people. She was not saying this because she was getting technical and demonstrating knowledge. She legitimately understood the acronym of that aforementioned disease to just be some sort of serious flu. She had no idea that it causes millions of deaths. Now, given that this was in the 8th grade, but nevertheless, a girl asked me how to spell GPS. Yes, English is her first language, and yes, she still takes crap for it 5 years later. Me, speaking to a student. I say, can you please plug this power extension into the wall? Which end? Wait, are you serious? I get confused. The pointy end goes in the wall. It should be noted I was working at a university at the time and this student was 18 years old. English class focusing on comedy. This girl comes to class blazed, can't stop laughing, is super disruptive, and then decides to ask, what is truth? Which, this is a lower div English class, we don't have time for your green herb-induced philosophical problems. Can I go to the bathroom? This is college, you idiot, of course you can. In my world history class, we were talking about the Egyptians, and my teacher made a joke about how one of the pharaohs looked like he was an alien that had been sent to rule the people. A girl then asked how the aliens got to Earth because there was no technology back in that time period, right? Everyone did a facepalm and an "Are you frickin' serious right now?" look. Why did they split the 13 colonies up into 50 states? This was in college. At the Jewish History Museum on an excursion, somebody interrupted the guide while they were explaining the Passover meal. Why do Jews do communion when they don't believe in Jesus who invented it? In Earth Science class in 9th grade. If the sun is so hot, how come the tape measure doesn't melt when we measure the distance from the Earth to the sun? In 9th grade biology, how are deer made out of meat if they eat grass all day? Yeah. When talking about the war in Iraq during class, a girl asked, "Is Islam near Iraq?" We'd just discovered World War II in advanced placement US history, and a reasonably intelligent guy asked when Napoleon got involved. When we laughed, he asked if we'd already covered him, and we explained, yes, 142 years prior with the Louisiana Purchase. My friend, who's basically a World War II buff, and doesn't every school have one, was just busting a gut, and this otherwise smart kid just sat back down with a perplexed and humbled look on his face. I mean, we've all gotten a name mixed up before. I think it's a fair bet that that's what happened here, because the only other alternative is this guy believing that blue-coated, musket-armed guardsmen were being strafed by Messerschmitt Bf-109s and run over by tanks, which is hilarious, but not a thing that happened. A senior girl in Trig when I was in sophomore asked what 0.5 was as a fraction because she forgot. It's a good thing she's pretty. In 2013, is the President of Canada Barack Obama? I don't even. In my Geography of Africa class, a girl asked, why do Africans always complain about not having water? It's not like they live in houses. Can't they just move their shacks closer to water? And I couldn't even. A girl in my high school asked my teacher if America was a subset of the United States and where it was located. 2 years later in government class, this same girl was also surprised to find out that England is on an island and not connected to the rest of Europe. I cringed really hard at a work meeting the other day. The manager said, "We've been thinking about hiring some temps to help with the workload, and if the load doesn't lighten after 6 months, we'll keep the best ones on as permanent staff." Lucas said, "Well, how much will the temps really do though, since they ain't getting paid?" He was thinking of the word intern, but it made him look especially stupid because he came to us from a temp agency. What happens if you put a bag of fries in an air conditioner? It was a thermal physics course, and the kids struggled for years to graduate with a physics degree. Alas, the professors always found his understanding merited an F. Okay, maybe not the worst, but a girl in my class continually asks if she can take a new page in her book when writing down notes. She's 15. In high school, how can evolution be true? That's like saying a black person and a white person are related. They can't be related, they have completely different skin. Yes, that was a question that was asked this decade. When exactly was the War of 1812 again? What food group does potpourri belong in? Have you been eating potpourri? My sophomore year of college, I took a biology class. The professor asked, "Can anyone give me an example of something hydrophobic?" This kid in the front raised his hand and said, "Cats." It's not what the teacher was looking for, but I guess it's true, and it got a lot of laughs. Wait a minute. Flamingos have 2 legs? Hackers, when did you stumble into something that made you GTFO? A couple of years back, I was really big into reactivating old Hotmail accounts and using them to log into Facebook. Since this was in the heyday of chainmails with 100 or so accounts there, I had a huge backlog to get through. I don't know why I did it. It was a combination of boredom and voyeurism, I think, and lots of free time. I felt like a sort of hacker at least. Occasionally, you stumble upon things you wish you weren't supposed to. I mean, yeah, I know how that sounds. Once, I came upon a guy's Facebook, and after a while I realized it hasn't been used in years. A bit like coming across an abandoned house. Tons of notifications and unopened PMs. On top of the list of those messages, it was a woman that kept trying to contact him. My first impression was that it was a stalker, maybe an ex that wasn't able to move on. I don't really want to go into details because even for me it felt like I'd walked into an absolutely private matter. But it was mostly her talking about her day-to-day stuff and occasionally begging him to come back. Sometimes it got real weird, with her telling him how she felt him in the wind. Turns out the guy was dead, and people have strange ways of coping. I left that habit behind after that. Just imagine being that woman and coming back to find your messages read. That would really mess me up good for a couple of days. Yeah, that's what I thought. I might be a creep and a voyeur, but I made sure I set those messages back to unread before leaving. I was asked to steal a couple of Bitcoin from a customer's associate back when Bitcoin and altcoins were booming. I got access to his wallet fairly easily, being curious as I am, and I also checked out how he got so much coin. He had tons of small sum payments with links attached to the transactions. I checked one, and it was just illegal videos containing unwilling participants. I'm not talking a few grand in Bitcoin in this guy's wallet, but closer to 6 to 7 figures. Just hundreds and hundreds of small $50 to $1,000 transactions. It was sickening. Lots and lots of the worst sort of illegal adult films. I told the guy I was working for that his associate was a frickin' predator and quickly dropped a line to the relevant authorities. Stuff like that screws you up, man. In short, I was asked to gain access to a Bitcoin wallet, checked the transactions, and they were selling real messed up and illegal stuff. Got hired through a website where someone wanted me to gain access to a kid's computer who doxed him. Got into it and found out that he was looking up recipes for explosives. I turned him in and noped out of there. And I've had a few others where I found the same sort of awful material we talked about in the last story. It's way too common. Yeah, the narrator has just realized that there's going to have to be some careful placement and selection here. Because, surprise, the people being hacked often have the same stuff that they want kept secret for the sake of self-preservation on their PCs. I should have guessed that one. Many long years ago, there was this website called AITA. It was basically just a weird ambiguous splash page with a countdown timer and a map with red dots all over it. This thing was super effective at rustling the jimmies of the entire internet. I found a way in relatively early, and based on a few things I found in the web route, it immediately became obvious that the whole thing was a prank, so I decided to leave it alone and just watch it play out. Right at the very end of the countdown, the guy that was running the whole thing updated the website with his big reveal, including some message about how the hackers from all over the world kept trying to break in, but none could manage it, and called us all lame noobs. I was a bratty teenager, so I took that as a challenge. I was on a teleconference with some other hackers at the time, so we jumped on that server through a back door I'd left and defaced the page with the message, "The internets will never be safe," and a few more choice but cringe words. Anyway, right around this time, as the countdown ended and for a while after, the server was getting swamped to the point of an essential DDoS. This was happening while I was logged into SSH on the server. I was in the process of doing some cleanup, deleting some utility scripts I'd put out on the server, but I was impatient. The lag was grueling and I was working faster than the server was sending me responses. I changed directories at one point and tried to delete everything in it before seeing a response from the server and didn't realize that I'd fat-fingered the CD command. I ended up deleting a bunch of this guy's stuff that I didn't even mean to. The second I realized what I'd done, I instantly felt horrible and noped the F out of there. We'd planned on razzing the guy for a while, but I was just totally done. I was hired to develop a payment processor for an unnamed large fast food brand. At this point, I had the ability to take out $100,000 a day into an offshore account. I would have done this by pulling a movie plot like a heist. I was going to take 2% of all tax payments. I was thinking about it for a while, and then the next day, someone I knew was busted for doing the same thing on a much smaller brand. At this point, I dipped out. I ended up working for the brand for a few more years without committing fraud. Not really serious hacking, but back in the day I wrote a Trojan that would steal user account info and CD keys from Diablo 2, which I would sell later on eBay for sweet, sweet cash. I would proxy between the connection of the client and server, and while the user was in the chat room on the realm, it would spam download links for the Trojan and subsequently hide the messages from anyone infected so they wouldn't suspect anything. This made it self-spreading, and it was actually so effective that eventually Blizzard put up a warning about it on their website. I took down the sites hosting it at that point since I was scared and didn't want it to get traced back to me. My old boss asked me to find the personal data of somebody that he'd met at a hotel for reasons. I explained that I was unlikely to be able to do it untraceably, explained social engineering, explained that I was no good at social engineering, and noped the F out. Let him try. KPP on iOS. I'm not even going to try to find a way around that thing. I worked for a company that was selling people's data in the early 2010s. They had about 6 million leads. I dropped the database before I left. I hope that company collapsed the next morning. Not really a hack. The school IT department were idiots and left the password to the main account hard-coded in a batch script. I went in and found out all the teachers' pay, the students' names, addresses, social security numbers, just to name a few. Nope, out. I like finding insecure IP cameras, mostly the ones with no password or the default password, and then log into them wherever they are. A lot are in houses, some are in kids' rooms or whatever. I honestly never tend to keep any open long enough to see people. One was just in a random house, in the front room, and there was someone on the sofa. After a few minutes, they got up and were completely starkers. I realized this was somewhat problematic and never went back to that one. I was at a Counter-Strike LAN party ages ago. I ran a bunch of NetSend scripts on the network, causing prompts to pop up in the front of the game saying dumb stuff like, "Good luck, right behind you," or "Your mother gives great down-under kisses." Eventually, the party organizer paused the games to walk everyone through how to disable messaging services. The funny thing was that about 15% of the people already had that off, including my group, and it caused a few unfair wins. I noped out when people started looking at me since I wasn't exactly quiet about the whole thing. It was frickin' amazing, and the start of a long road of engineering and infosec work. This was back in the day of AIM and chat rooms. I had a guy I was watching in a chat room. I sent him a message acting as someone significantly younger than me. Told him to download my naughty pictures. He did, and it was just a quick download that gave me access to the entire system. The tool I used displayed the entire system and all functions in a hierarchy of importance with the Windows kernel at the tippy top. As soon as I was all set, I deleted his kernel. I lost all of my tools from back then, but that was a sweet time to be around. Seek and destroy internet predators. Script Kitty College Me decided to play with a pen testing program against a government website from the school network. The amount of network info and other metadata, as well as actual documents it was pulling, was scary. Plus, it was overheating my rig because of the processing power involved, and just overall I realized this was a crappy idea, so I killed it. I crashed a print daemon on a SprintNet, times 0.25, connected system, thereby freezing and crashing the whole mainframe. Never reconnected again because I was afraid there'd be monitoring. This was like in 1991, you whippersnappers. This message means absolutely zippy-doo to the narrator, but I hope that at least one old-school hacker from 30 years back saw this and got a quick chuckle from the memories. We try to cater to all tastes here on the channel. Back in middle school, I used a VNC to hack all of the school computers. I had a free lesson, so I went to the computer lab, or whatever they called it back then. I connected to the internet, ran Angry IP Scanner, which was a great tool by the way, and picked a random computer. Now, for those non-hackers, a VNC basically allows you to connect to a different person's PC and control and monitor it. As soon as I connected to this guy's computer, I just saw adult material all over the screen, like quite specific interest stuff, not your run-of-the-mill mom-and-pop smut. The reason why this was so weird was that everyone there was like 11, 12, 13, 14, and all of that stuff was never talked about in the school. Reading this, I think the best thing about hackers is that they can be moral. Keep up the good fight, guys. When I was young, I got into hacking AOL for cool screen names. I met people who social engineered AOL. They'd call up AOL and pretend their system, Merlin, was down, and trick real employees into resetting stuff. It was on the converse call when they stole the owner of AOL's account, as well as those of other high-ranking figures at the company. A couple of years later, me and my fellow hackers were all friends, playing Halo and stuff together. They told me to connect to this live server, that you could control the mouse, and they hacked the Comcast website and wanted me to connect to it. I had this weird gut feeling to ask what it was for once, and they told me. I said hell to the no. Also, these same people had a botnet channel. I was in it back in the day, and a government cybercrimes agent came in and told us to shut it down. I was like 14, so I was terrified that I was going to juvie. But now I work in systems admin and have a good job, so I'm kind of thankful that I wandered into that AOL chat back in the day. It made me the person that I am now. Pretty deep into the dark web for work, looking for certain things, came across certain adverts on darknet search websites that made me leave work until the next day. Noped the frick out of there. I would prefer not to say what it was, but you can guess. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The killer of the CMD library of Ethereum multisig wallets. Approximately couple of 100 million gone forever. So what you're saying is that you avenged all the guys unable to buy GPUs because of these miners? I would kiss you if I could. I was a spammer in the mid to late 90s. There were a group of 3 of us who would make a website using affiliate content and then spam the link to it. Started off by spamming AOL chat rooms, and we made a decent living from it. 2 to 3 grand for each of us per week. Then we got bigger into it and left the confines of AOL, which led to bigger paydays of 20 to 30 grand per month until the authorities knocked on one of my partner's doors. They never did come to me, and I was 17 at the time, and I stopped that once that happened. Well, this isn't a life or death situation like some of the other posts here. I sniffed the credentials for our student information and grading system in high school with a program called Cain and Abel. Did nothing with it, but I could see grades, addresses, social security numbers, the works. This is more amateur teenage social engineering than pure hacking. A friend and I created an account on a French chat website. It was called CocoChat or something like that. It was aimed at children, I think. We made our account look like we were a 9-year-old girl and just started chatting with people. Needless to say, it was pretty disturbing seeing the kind of things people wanted to talk to us about. One of them was talking almost every day with us. We even thought about sending him a keylogger or a Trojan to find out more information about him and call the cops on him. In the end, we were too disgusted and frightened by this guy to continue doing that. I was pretty good with computers as a teenager and got into hacking, so of course I decided to have a little fun on the social network. The Wi-Fi password was literally schoolmascot staff09, which was easy to crack and felt like a trap or joke. After some tinkering around trying to get into unsecured devices, I ended up gaining access to a classmate's laptop. I didn't recognize any files right away as personally identifiable until I got to a folder that said apush drafts, which contained another folder that said apush bibliography, which contained yet another that read apush chapter guides, and inside held one last folder that said apush lecture recordings. Thinking I'd get a leg up on some future classes, I opened one of the files. It was one of the seniors at my school dressed as George Washington, wig and all, undressing and tickling his pickle. My intent was to maybe steal some notes and make my history class a breeze, but instead I saw a guy yanking his doodle American Revolution style. I was a freshman, he was a senior, so we didn't cross paths, but his historical reenactment events sometimes pop up on my Facebook, and I am filled with horror. I wouldn't call myself a hacker, just a Google dork. I don't believe how easy it is. Just a Google search away, you can look through someone's camera. I was an early internet adopter back in the days of Slip and Trumpet Windsock. Was in a racy Usenet newsgroup and came across about 12 images of straight-up illegal material of the sort described elsewhere here. I knew the admin for the ISP we used personally. I called him at his desk and let him know what was up. They cleaned the spool and notified the FBI, but that shook me. That was 1994, by the way. My uncle lives with his parents and everything was unsecured. Open network so any files on devices could be accessed. On his computer, the uncle cranks it to Betty, Archie, and Veronica material. I'm convinced the dark web is about 2/3 adult films themed around revenge and some more containing unwilling participants and some German lunatic talking about conspiracies. The last third is buying green herb through the mail. I had to use all of my elite hacking skills at once, one time. I even got a blurry security pic, but was able to zoom in and 4K that crap by saying, "Computer, enhance image." I had to type a lot very fast to get past all those firewalls, but at the end of the day, I was able to gain access to NASA and confirm that the Earth is indeed round, people. After submitting multiple bug reports to various financial organizations and cloud service providers about things like being able to bypass authentication requirements or spoof official documents, and always seeing the issue closed as working as intended, I've kind of given up on trusting anything to be secure. I managed to break my ex's father's password. While snooping through files to see what I could find, I stumbled upon folders and folders of this one guy, his wife, and various friends of theirs wearing nothing but literal number 2, going number 1 on each other. They were in their 70s, and it left me scarred. Oh boy, yeah, I don't care how much you liked that ex-partner of yours. That's not an association you can really ever just shrug off, is it? You'd need hypnotherapy or something to unsee that. I discovered that my friend's homework folder contained nothing but actual homework. It was a sad, disappointing day indeed. Working in IT for a large medical group, I found inappropriate films featuring animals on the owner's laptop, on his home computer, and office desktop. The guy was 72. Back when Kazaa was big, I downloaded a bunch of adult movies. Teen me figured since I built my own computer and bought all the parts myself that it'd be safe from my mum and her newly married husband. Wrong. He didn't hack it exactly because I had no safeguards and had nothing to hide. But when I got home, he asked me why I was watching all this animal smut. I was so confused and said I hadn't because that's gross. Came to find out, one of the videos I downloaded was labeled as regular old vanilla adult film, but it was, not. So that's pretty much when I stopped trusting peer-to-peer smut downloads. Let me give you an actual answer. Actual things I found disturbing. Professionally, I'm not a hacker, just an IT monkey. First, I'm honestly surprised that our banking system works, period. I've worked in multiple banks, and frankly, I'm surprised their systems work at all. Some servers are 20 years old, some don't have a working DR solution, some are using software that's no longer on the market, so if those servers break, and they're 20 years old, there's no working alternative in place. I've seen such servers break twice. Once we had to buy an identical server from eBay and ship it to London overnight to repair a broken machine. Another time I just happened to be at the end of a long line of failures, and I'm pretty sure I was responsible for at least 10 million in trading losses. To this day, I don't know how I wasn't sacked for that one. This was an old Solaris 8 server, and frankly, probably half the components weren't working properly, but I was still responsible for that screw-up. Fun fact, we found some servers everyone forgot about. Some old OpenBSD 3 server, that's an OS from the frickin' 90s, after selling our business unit. The new owners just asked what the frick is that thing. We had old Red Hat 2 servers still running around when I left that bank a few years ago. We had IBM Power 4 servers around as well. Needless to say, nobody has released any security updates on those servers in over a decade. Second thing, security? What's that? This is mobile banking. We need no security. I've seen, quote, engineers commit confidential code for mobile banking apps with secret keys to public Git repos. Also, at one point, I was aware of critical security vulnerabilities in 2 mobile banking apps. This was about 2 years ago. Types of vulnerabilities that potentially would allow hackers to get all info, including card data. Which brings me to the third point. Pervasive culture of hiding everything. We had a security breach? Well, do the regulators know this? No? Then let's keep it that way. Nobody needs to know that we've been hacked and millions of people are about to see their money stolen. They hunt down whistleblowers who report this kind of thing. One bank I work at got fined for money laundering, established office in some Eastern European country and hired a bunch of young, fresh, recent graduates desperate for jobs and gave them documents to analyze, in language none of them spoke. They literally went out of their way to find students who couldn't understand the documents they were analyzing, and this was my first job. You know what happened when I actually found money laundering? The company would be gone from the system. Private companies, especially small ones, are the worst, probably because they can't afford armies of engineers to try and fix their problems. It's remarkably easy to hack some web store, get credit card data, and start selling it on the dark web. You can literally buy someone else's credit card for a few bucks. Banks at least have some security in place. My school's ID system was alphabetical and passwords followed numerical. So Adam Ames was Adam Ames 0001 password. We had access to everyone, and everyone had all their stuff on cloud servers, so we could edit anyone at any time. While I didn't do anything, I had friends delete everyone they hated's homework folders and stuff. Eventually, 30 kids were passed because the school didn't want to admit its security system was that easy to beat. But another 20 kids were due to fail. The school changed grades themselves so the graduation rate was higher, and we were able to see it happen live, so we had 2 major issues. Back when DSL was king and you could snoop your internal ISP network for file shares, I did just that. This was in the IRC days, so I always went looking down the same folder path to find whatever was open. This isn't really hacking in the sense of figuring out how something works and then working around it or defeating a security flaw. You could literally just input an IP range, and it would go around to every IP asking, "Hey, are you sharing?" I'd found some good adult movies, some real weird music, and rarely I'd find like a TV show or a movie. Fast DSL was still maybe 10M at the time, so compared to now it was really slow. After finding one of these accounts, I started opening the JPEGs inside. Things were looking good until I ran across obvious illegal adult films of the sort described earlier. I was sick, like I had to go throw up. I thought about what I can do about this. I could report it to my ISP security department, but then I'd be knocking on myself. So that's obviously out. Could just delete it, but then they'd just download it again. So I took one of the images, renamed it to logo.sys, and placed it in the main root of the offender's C drive. To explain further for those that don't know, Windows 95 all the way up to Windows XP kept the loading Windows splash screen in a file called logo.sys. This made it easy for partners like HP, Dell, Compaq, and the others to make custom loading screens like Powered by HP along with the Windows logo. So it meant that now, the next time that computer rebooted, instead of a Windows loading screen, it would display the offending image that I'd renamed. I hacked into my own phone and went to Google symptoms of short-term memory loss, and all the links were already purple. What was the most horrible city that you've ever been to, and why was it so bad? This was written in 2012. Karachi, Pakistan. I saw malnourished children wandering a field of garbage, eating whatever was edible from the multi-acre pile of waste. I saw all manner of crippled children, teenagers, adults, and the elderly begging for the equivalent of 20 cents on the streets to stay away from starvation. More than one cried when I gave them money. I heard of my aunt's friend whose life savings were stolen from her as she walked out of the bank. She was making a deposit on a flat. She was robbed at weapon point and then chased the thieves for a mile down busy streets, screaming and crying for someone to help her as people made room for them to pass. My cousin worked there as a reporter for a brief period and did an article on the Hijra. They were essentially trans or eunuchs who begged and extorted money, basically to get them to stop hounding you. There was a man who was kidnapped by them, locked in a basement to a chair for 3 days and repeatedly beaten with a board with nails in it. He was given a choice, to have his manhood cut off and become a Hijra himself, or be killed there in the chair. He eventually befriended one who allowed him breaks without supervision, and he escaped through a window. He then ran to the nearest rickshaw driver, got him to drive away, and then broke down and told him his story. The driver then gave him a free ride to the hospital. I saw a basic lack of any city planning. Highways interlaced neighborhoods, so the only way to get to your house from a bus stop was to jaywalk across a road with a speed limit of 65 kilometers per hour. I had to engage in this myself a few times when visiting relatives. I saw an unrivaled level of pollution and littering. During rush hour, the streets downtown had a visibility of 20 to 30 feet. The streets stank of smog and burned your eyes. The streets themselves were littered with all manner of plastics, human filth, and miscellaneous detritus. People didn't seem to use garbage cans. It was commonplace to throw garbage on the streets. There was also no visible form of garbage disposal. Garbage was just piled at street corners and burned. Ugh, that stench. I will never forget that smell. I could go on for a while. I stayed there for a period of 2 months while I was 13. My parents were with me in the first 2 weeks, but had to go back to their real lives. I elected to stay with relatives that I'd never met before and really soak up the culture. It was a blast, but I'll never go back to that terrifying city. I almost died a couple of times, and to go back now I would much more likely die. For those that want to see what Karachi is like, Vice did a story on it. The most interesting is part 5, where they interview an accomplished hitman. Well, at least this first story starts off strong on our expected theme. I'll say that there is a really interesting mix of first and third world countries coming up, and the way people seem to have interpreted their worst city is quite broad, so stay tuned. Raxaul, Bihar in northeast India. Been there for more than a month working in a hospital. Electricity for around 6 hours a day, rivers are black and contain more plastic than water, and you weren't allowed to visit anything on your own, including the surrounding villages, because they'd kidnap or rob you with homemade firearms. Almost everyone lived in filth. Involuntary electrocutions coming into the hospital every day because people would just try to steal electricity with live wires hanging around everywhere. Every rain would flood the streets and the filth would come out of the rivers because there were no sewers. Nice people though. except those that would threaten to kill our midwives or doctors because they claimed that their wife gave birth to a son, not a daughter, which happened several times in 5 weeks. You go over the border to Nepal, just 1 mile away, and voila, paradise. Not compared to many other places, but definitely compared to Raxol. In Nepal, I really learned to appreciate concrete streets, cars, nice shops, even though they sold only replicas, of course, and garbage disposal. Back to Raxol. Extremely corrupt government and clerks in general in that state. The Indians we talked to on our flight, who were very friendly and communicative like almost all Indians, although they really seemed to like fibbing without bad intent. They asked us where we were headed and we told them Bihar. They were shocked and tried to convince us otherwise. We did see some of Nepal and northern India after our visit to Raxol, and it indeed was generally much more pleasant, although experiencing something like this, even for just a month, really changes your perspective on humans and what matters in life in general. Oh, and the villages around Raxol looked like something straight out of a Help Starving Children commercial. 20 clay and straw huts, some oxen, some paths, some rice fields, children in various states of undress everywhere. The hospital staff sent out 3 or 4 doctors and nurses on tour each week to try and teach their children basic reading and math. Most of the inhabitants, certainly all the women, had never in their life been as far away from their villages as Raxol, which is around 5 to 10 miles away. In some villages, the girls were supposedly married at 14 and had to stay in their clay hut until they gave birth to their firstborn. Although that's just what the veterans there told me. They didn't speak English, and my Hindi was rudimentary, so I couldn't even ask them. Also, something I just remembered and need to get out. Right when we were there, the hospital had some sort of special sterilization month. It was just 300 rupees for women, men would never do that there, and 50 if they could prove that they were too poor to pay the 300. In 2005, 50 rupees were less worth than $1 or euro. Interesting fact, the surgeons usually sewed the skin layer with sterilized fishing lines because they were so much cheaper than surgical-grade sewing material. Don't blame them, the more people they can treat, the better. Pattaya, Thailand. Most Westerners here are greasy, overweight brothel tourists. It's full of poor women from the north who come there out of desperation to get involved with the trade. It tries to maintain an aura of glamour and allure, but everything about it is tawdry. Pattaya is honestly the worst beach city you can go to. It's filled with fat, randy Russian men trying to do the deed with an oriental girl. Ugh. But I can assure you that the rest of Thailand isn't that bad, and there are some amazing beach towns and cities out there. Basildon, Essex in the UK. The one time I went there, I was offered certain acts by what looked like a drunk, malnourished teenager before I'd even left the multi-story car park. When I told her to get lost, she reassured me that it was okay, she had rubbers. The town is little more than an endless parade of inbreds and drunken teenage mums in tracksuits. Screw everything about that place. It's definitely Camden, New Jersey for me. I've been to some crappy places around the world, including Palestinian areas where you really weren't supposed to be there, and legitimately crappy parts of Philly. Not from the, I'm from a quiet suburb and the Temple area is scary to me. I mean the actual north of Philly. I've never felt as uncomfortable in an immediate, self-preserving sort of way as I was in Camden. It's a perfectly fine city if you just take the speed line over to certain places. A few of the destinations are innocuous, like the aquarium, the Tweeter Center, a few things like that. But certain areas, man. I once got lost driving around Camden. It was the middle of the afternoon, in the middle of the week, 1 p.m. on a Tuesday if I recall correctly, and there were people loitering on either side of a large street. As I stopped at a light, they just casually started shambling towards my car. I mean, not trying to sneak up out of my line of sight or even sprint forward to catch me off guard. This was a decent-sized group of people, a handful from either side, just casually stumbling towards my car. It was like a zombie movie. I felt like I was in a scary movie. I ended up running the red light before they reached me. I'm a big dude and I've been mugged at weapon point more than once. I'm not a squeamish guy. But at that moment, I was really like, I'm not ready for this city. Psychologically, this is something I ain't ready to swallow. I was living in Philly and I decided I was tired of paying rent. I looked online and saw a house in Camden for $5,000. So I drove my car down there to check it out. I look at the place and realize it's worse than a dump right off the bat. The siding was all ripped off and the neighborhood was burnt out. But when I got out of the car, I looked up at the attic windows and a guy was just looking at me. We make eye contact and he disappears from the window like a ghost. I got the heck out of there. I've been all around Camden in my urban exploration phase though, and never got robbed. I was probably just lucky. Camden, New Jersey. The city is littered with working girls, substance use, and abandoned buildings. It's pretty sad, really. Camden used to be a thriving city. People from Philadelphia would go to Camden for its shops and nightlife. It was the birthplace of many industries, including RCA and Campbell. Since the 1950s, the population has plummeted more than 40% from 120,000 to the current level of around 70,000. And 40% of the 70,000 are currently unemployed. The story of the downfall is an interesting read, and if you guys have any time, I encourage you to check it out. Camden. It's like Gotham without Batman. You know, I kind of figured that certain cities would be making repeat appearances in this video, but my money was nowhere near it being Camden, New Jersey, and it being mentioned twice sequentially is ridiculous. Although I'm limited in my travels, my money would have been on Birmingham being the first reprising city from a first world country. Sorry, Brummies. Mogadishu, Somalia. I'm currently living and working in Mogadishu as a humanitarian worker. When I first saw this question, I thought, well, that's an easy answer, but thought it'd be kinda cheating to suggest it. That being said, I don't know what to write that would be at all surprising to anyone. Main reasons to be listed as #1 worst city would be the city being in complete ruins, most neighborhoods being controlled by militia, assassinations and indiscriminate killings being commonplace, multiple IED attacks a week, rampant police and military corruption, kidnappings of foreigners, Sharia law, mutilation of private parts, and a few other things. Overall, good times. Nikel, Russia. Murmansk is close second, though. With a little bit of cleaning up on the sides of buildings, I think that Murmansk could actually look quite nice. Isn't Nikel the place that has so much pollution that they want to start mining the soil for minerals that came down from the pollution? You know, sometimes I hate my town, and then I see comments like that make me so freaking glad I don't live anywhere else. Port-au-Prince, Haiti is pretty terrible, and I went there before the earthquake. Urine running through the streets, burning piles of trash, kids no more than 3 begging you for food. Not a pleasant experience. Most people I met in Haiti were quite nice though, so that makes up for it a little. The Haitians are great, but Port-au-Prince is the worst place I've ever been, and I've traveled quite a bit. I know there are worse places in the world, but if you're in the UK, don't go to Croydon. I wonder how many folk are just stating their hometowns. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Tijuana. Let me dip my paintbrush in raw feces and paint you a picture. It's actually difficult to determine where the city ends and the dump begins. Hint, the dump has burned horse carcasses. There's dust and trash everywhere. People's houses are made out of scavenged garbage. Most of the buildings look like the builders got fired halfway through the job. There's so much dust that even the sky has a crappy brownish hue. On every barbed wire fence, there must have been thousands of raggedy plastic shopping bags just flapping in the wind. Blackpool, England. Whilst driving through, I got my windshield smashed by a 10-year-old hoodie. Djibouti. Worst city in Africa, 15 miles from the Somali border, and it smells like crap. The only thing there is a massive army base and a fueling stop for naval vessels. Stockton, California. Just depressing. I freaking knew this would be here. Gateshead. It's like a city from Fallout. Basically, me and my parents were curious and in Newcastle, so we took the metro across the Type to Gateshead, and we were not very impressed. Leaving a friend's dormitory in Camden and waiting for the bus, I was approached by 2 police cars. They demanded I get in the back of their car and they'd escort me to a neighboring town where I could take another bus home. That night, someone was murdered a few feet from where I was waiting. As someone who's lived 5 minutes from Camden my whole life, I can say this is 100% accurate. I was driving through Camden once, I can't remember why, and I was pulled over by the cops so that they could tell me to drive out of there as fast as possible and that they'd escort me. I drive a 95 Jeep Wrangler. Imagine someone in a Mercedes. Pallet Town. Nothing to do there, and my neighbor is a jerk. I don't know. I got a free Bulbasaur from there. I thought it was alright. Holy crap. Detroit, Michigan. Are you kidding me? That place all around just reeks of broken dreams and heartbreak. Yeah, I've been in worse cities in Michigan. I've driven and walked around a lot of Detroit, but I'm more scared of Flint or Saginaw, the city itself, than anywhere in Detroit. I've been shot at in Flint and Saginaw multiple times. Detroit, I feel safer. But overall, there were like small 40-person towns in Jamaica that I drove through on my way from the airport to Negril. I can't help but feel like crying when I look back on it that these people literally had nothing but a metal container, like a shipping crate to call a home. And if a hurricane took that away, they'd all die young. God damn it. I clicked on this thread and kept thinking, don't be Detroit, don't be Detroit, don't be Detroit, as it loaded. Detroit is not that bad. I feel like people who don't live in the metro Detroit have a good understanding of it. It's not the best city by any means, but there's no way it's the worst city worldwide. Bakersfield, the armpit of California. My visit consisted of getting lost and seeing an undressed man passed out at 2 in the afternoon, numerous working girls, the creepiest bars I've ever seen, and a dead dog lying on the side of the freeway. Good times. Mogadishu, Somalia. Between 2006 and 2007, you had the Islamic Courts Union fighting the transitional federal government, led by the self-proclaimed president Yusuf Ahmed. They were fighting close combat in the city blocks in the south, while Ethiopian army rained artillery fire from the west. Also, US Navy gunships were giving air support to them, taking out entire buildings. Complete chaos in the streets, no one really knew who was fighting who, dead bodies everywhere. By far one of the worst moments in my life. Our houses had a giant stone wall around them, and my father and uncles were guarding it with AKs and 9mm, yelling to everyone who approached, "Who the frick are you? If we don't know you, we'll shoot you." And they only let in people they knew and women and children. I was 16 and they gave me a gat and told me to get inside and unloaded anyone who wasn't escorted by them. They said I and 5 other cousins were the last line of defense for the 35 women and children inside. Lucky for me, we all survived and I didn't have to demonstrate my sweet Call of Duty skills. There was a small arms exchange between my father and a few lost soldiers. I'm not sure who they belonged to, but luckily nobody was hit. Also, the south side of the wall was hit by artillery, leaving a 4-meter gap and taking down a part of the roof in the back rooms. Don't get me wrong, it was already a crappy city, but the end of 2006 got it really messed up. I was born of 1989 in Mogadishu and lived there until I was 9. The Civil War started in 1989 and had been going on ever since, with some moments of relative peace. So when I visited in 2006, tensions rose and all heck broke loose very fast. And there's our second city with multiple appearances. I don't think you get a prize for that honor though. And I will say it's probably a little unfair to claim a place as the worst city during the literal bombardment and civil war in such a place, although Mogadishu by a lot of accounts is still a bit harrowing, to put it lightly. Fresno, California. Runner-up, Blackpool, UK. Blackpool's truly terrifying, innit? Not only is it crap in itself, but the people there seem to have got stuck at some point halfway through evolution. Paris, France. Screw that city. I had some time to spare while waiting for my train to Madrid in Paris, decided to go to the Eiffel Tower, took the classic pics and stuff, grabbed a cab back to the train station, and the cabbie did the following. Took a pee in the street, got into a fight with a fellow driver that cut him, insulted some people in turbans that were selling stuff, got into another fight, took me to the wrong place and got mad with me when I showed him a picture of where I wanted to go, got pulled over by the cops for apparently doing business in an illegal way, the cops interviewed me, and finally took me to the station. Parisians are, well, interesting. Delhi, India. I've lived in LA most of my life and was totally unprepared for the amount of pollution in Delhi. I was there for 10 days, and visibility at best was about 2 miles, after which everything disappears into the brown mist. People litter everywhere and don't think twice about it. I was dumbfounded to see empty trash cans surrounded by trash. It's not the kind of city a foreigner can blend in, and you're constantly hounded by beggars and almost everyone tries charging you 3 to 20 times the normal rate. Cutting in line is the norm. You can literally be speaking with a cashier and someone will squeeze their head between your face and the hole in the window through which you were speaking to the cashier without a second thought. Traveling in cars there is torturous. The worst traffic I've ever seen. People signal only with their horn. Making a left, honk your horn. Going through an intersection, honk your horn. Someone in the way, honk. You're surrounded by hundreds of cars, mostly rickshaws, all of which are just constantly honking. People drive both ways on both sides of the roads, which is scary as heck. The smell. Nothing ever seems to be finished there, and when it is, all the refuse and leftover material is right next to the site. The police and military, I'm not sure which, all have automatic weapons and they will also extort you for whatever they can. Open sewage troughs, sickening disparity of wealth living side by side, opulent, luxurious hotels butting up against shanties, with guards and walls surrounding the hotels. Crowded, long lines, no beef, street food looks delicious but will make you viciously sick. Did I miss anything? I enjoyed my visit though, granted me perspective that I didn't have before. I felt the exact same way about Delhi and India in general. I think the worst part was not being mentally prepared for the sickening amount of poverty. Being constantly approached and blocked by beggars was depressing and exhausting. It's also hands down the smelliest place I've ever been to. I could still smell India on my clothes even after getting home and going through multiple washes. It was an amazing, eye-opening experience, though. Cleveland, but I heard that it's not Detroit, so it has that going for it. West Dayton, Ohio. Cheapest down-under kisses in America. My brother is a Dayton cop, and I once asked him where in Dayton I should avoid, and he circled the entire map of Dayton. Manila, the Philippines. I've been to many countries, but between the world's crappiest airport, the traffic, the con artists everywhere, the humidity, and just the lack of beauty in the city, this one ranks up there. Corpus Christi, Texas is where dreams go to die. It smells a lot, it rains a lot, and there's nothing to do except huff paint. I raise you Kingsville, Texas. That was so bad we went to Corpus to have fun. I lived in Rough and Ready, California for a while. They separated from the Union during the Civil War. The town was mostly trailer parks, and about once monthly a trailer would blow up due to a crystal lab going wrong inside. Paris, France. Sure, the sightseeing is nice, but everything else is horrible. The whole place stinks like pee and sewers, food and drinks are ridiculously overpriced, there are muggers and salesmen who force you to give them your money after strapping an elastic band on your hand. Not a fan of the urban culture at all. It's a beautiful city ruined by its own inhabitants. I remember just giving up and not eating while I was in Paris. I starved because I was sad and couldn't order food properly without teeing people off. Waiters refused to take my money and serve me because I mispronounced something, and grocery store clerks glared at me. I've never had a more difficult time exchanging money for food than when I was in Paris. When I did eat food and drink wine, it was not impressive at all. I was starving so badly that I promptly left and traveled to other cities in the world that impressed me much more. Detroit, Michigan, Gary, Indiana, and Cleveland, Ohio make up a triangle-shaped belt buckle on the Rust Belt. Toledo, Ohio is like a little crap turd stud in the center. Bucharest is the saddest city in Europe, I'm sure. It's full of stray dogs and seems to have an all-around bleak feeling to it. Riverside, California. A little desert town with nothing to do, no future, and average temps of 100+ degrees. And so much pollution, it's like breathing in glass. Though I've been convinced that it's really a conspiracy to make global warming worse in order to make the town a beachfront property. Is it cheating to name an entire country? Because I once took a trip to the Dominican Republic. It was frickin' miserable. From the airport to the resort, I saw nothing but misery and poverty. Third world nation. All along the streets were shacks and shanties. Dead donkey in the middle of the roadway rotting away. Working girls all over the place. And some of them were clearly minors. It was just depressing. The resort was nice, but whenever you left that false bubble of paradise, it was just so depressing. Screw all of you routing these US cities. True terror is witnessing a major city in any frickin' third world country. Miserable as heck. To be fair, the thread is what's the worst city you've been to, not the worst city in the world. Not a lot of people holiday in Karachi or Lagos, even though they're obviously far worse than Detroit or Gary, so they're not going to get mentioned as often. Chernobyl. Place is a dump. I thought it was a blast. Los Angeles, California. Superficial and fake. It's not about who you are or what you can do, but how many names you can drop in a conversation. Even the janitors brag about whose toilets they've cleaned. What's the biggest flex that your pet pulled on you to assert dominance? We have a specific plant in our garden, euphorbias for you garden nerds. Well, my dog just wouldn't stop doing his business on them. Them specifically. So I took some firewood planks and stuck them in the ground as a makeshift fence around them. It worked for a few days until she crawled past the gap between the plant and the hedge, did a reverse turn and crapped on my plant again. Persistence at its best. I have 5 cats. The youngest will wait until I clean every litter box in the house and throw the bag in the trash to decide that she wants to go number 2 in one box and then number 1 in another box. I wondered for a while if this is the only time she goes and she's just picky about having a clean box, but it's not. This happens literally every time I clean their boxes. She'll sit and watch me as I'm cleaning them too. One time when my Poochie managed to get 3 tennis balls in his mouth at the dog park. He hasn't been able to do it again since that one time, but he routinely walks around with 2 in his mouth and looks at the other dogs like, check me out. At the dog park years back, we were approaching a pond. There was this big dog in the water that looked horribly disfigured. Like it must have tried fetching a live AmITheA and had his mouth blown apart. Poor thing. Whatever, life goes on, he was happily playing with 2 other dogs in the water. As I got closer, trying to discreetly check out this messed up mouth, The motherfricker drops 3 frickin' tennis balls out of his mouth and suddenly goes back to being a normal, idiot, non-disfigured boxer dog, or similar breed. I don't even think that was his maximum capacity, to be honest. My rabbit when I went out of town for the weekend. I lined up someone to stay with her. I was just heading back to my house when I got the call to get home now because the rabbit was acting weird. Listless, turning down treats, all things that point to the beginnings of GI stasis, which is bad. I get home and sit with her for about 20 minutes. Yep, she's showing signs. I get her to the emergency vet. $300 later, and the vet tells me her diagnosis. Drama queen. The rabbit was just upset that I wasn't home. Every time my bun would get mad at me, he'd just pile all of his toys in his ceramic water bowl and push it to his cage door. Then he'd just angry stare at me like, "That's it! I'm taking my roly toy and I'm leaving." I'd never thought that rabbits were particularly smart or distinct from one another, but lately I've met a few indoor bunnies and some of them are real little characters, by which I mean jerks. There were a couple of more chill ones though. One time, my bird was really mad about bedtime. She flew to the curtain, peeped loudly until I watched, and then pooped on the curtain while looking straight at me. She was poop-trained and definitely knew what she was doing. I'm always startled by how frickin' smart birds are. A friend of mine has an African grey. He's owned her for 20 years or so. He got married about 7 years ago, and the bird is well aware that the husband is the new guy. Half the time when he tells her to do something, like be quiet, the response he gets is a very salty, "I'm not your bird," then yells, "Diane!" because the husband has no street cred. Okay, so this is just a little gross, FYI. My golden retriever brought back a whole deer leg once. A whole leg, from hoof to hip. Saw him walking up from the field and I thought he had just a big stick until I saw the pink dangly bits. Absolutely no idea where he got it. I searched our entire 12-acre property and the adjoining neighbor's 20 acres. Didn't find anything. He was proud of it too. Didn't try to eat it or anything, just proudly brought it back to show me. It was like his new special stick and I'd throw it for him. My mum was horrified. Best part was, the dog's name was Buck. Yeah, my husky came back with a leg once too. We lived by the woods though. I just assumed she found it out there somewhere. She came back with many things. The most impressive was she was covered in porcupine quills, hobbling along. That was a trip to the 24-hour vet. But she had her head held high because she had in her mouth, by the neck, that porcupine. I went out in the woods with her the next week to find out where she got the thing. As the crow flies, 2 miles. But she probably took the trails like she always did, so she walked for at least 2 miles with quills all in her side, back, mouth, and both front legs. With that frickin' porcupine. One of my dogs used the other dog as a stepping stool to climb up on the couch. Straight up walked up the one laying next to the couch to get up there. Just blatant disrespect. My friend and at the time roommate's dog got out and ran into the highway. Got hit by a car going 50 to 55 miles per hour. The driver took him to the vet. We got the call and went to get him to go find out he had an itty-bitty scratch on his knee. And that's about it. He literally took a hit by a car, was sent flying, and walked away from it with no injuries. Rhodesian Ridgebacks are tough as nails. My dog hardly ever barks and is very well behaved. When we go for walks, every dog we walk past in my neighborhood barks ferociously at him. And he pees in their yards. And only in their yards. Every time I'm cleaning up dog doo, my dog will squat down right next to me and drop a giant steaming load of more. She poops probably 5 times a day as well. She does it to be a jerk. My significant other's dog turns over her food bowl every single time she's left by herself. She'll even do it when she knows you're leaving but haven't left just yet. I bought my 10-pound dog this gigantic plush bed to put on my side of the bed because I'm tired of sleeping with them. I figured I'd have to babygate them there for the first few nights, but no big deal. The first night it went okay, a little whining, quickly settled down and went to sleep. The second night, my girl dog, who I've had since she was a puppy, decided she was not going to stand for this inhumane mistreatment and literally stood on her back feet and screamed. I've never heard a dog make the frickin' noise this banshee was making. I thought she was dying. I moved the baby gate to get to her, and she stopped screaming and hopped up on my bed and curled up like she usually does, like nothing was wrong in the first place. I can hear that scream. It's the same scream I hear from my dog when I spray his paws when he's done something bad. He's a big baby and he acts like they've just been dipped in battery acid. When we got guinea pigs, we thought we might have hurt one because she screamed bloody murder when we picked her up. The next time we realized she was just a big baby when she screamed just as bad before any of our hands had actually touched her. I have a pot-bellied pig named Luau. I was outside on my patio working on a craft project while I let him run around the yard. He kept coming up and bumping against the table to see if I had a treat or if I'd pet him, and he was messing me up, so I put a spray bottle of water next to me. He knows it and doesn't like getting sprayed, so he'll stay away and exercise instead of bothering me. I went inside for a minute, came back out, and the spray bottle was on its way to the other side of the yard, and Luau had climbed into my seat and was sitting there happily wagging his little pig tail. I have a blue heeler. I was moving to Germany and selling things on Let Go. She didn't like the idea of people taking our stuff, so she started getting aggressive. So when I saw it starting to happen, when the next customer arrived, she got put in a bedroom. The next time that customer came, she grabbed a stuffed animal and put it in her mouth as if to say, "I will not act like I will bite someone," and then carried the animal around in her mouth the entire time the people were there. The kids petted her. Everyone thought she was so cute. For the next 2 weeks as I sold stuff, when people came over, she had a stuffed animal in her mouth. Healers are so smart, it's kind of crazy. This is definitely my fault because I've encouraged it, but it's still funny. Every day I come home from work and I give my kids a hug or a pat on the head or some show of affection. The dog will whine and follow me around the house until I drop to both knees on the floor and give him a hug as well. I put my pet mouse in a tall wooden box without a lid because I thought he couldn't climb that high. He pooped in the box and covered his paws in it, which I think provided him with the friction required to climb. He made it to the top and I had to put him back into the box, but it was quite impressive. I had a foster dog once, and while we weren't home, she somehow scooted her crate all the way into the living room and managed to stick her entire head through the bars to chew through one of the important cords on our TV, so we were left without sound for like 2 months. I like that the pet in no way benefited from this, and likely didn't foresee any tangible reward from doing so in the first place. This is just an FU for leaving the pooch in the crate. Nice. I showed my new hamster to my best friend and he started pulling his own crap out of his butt with his teeth and threw it at us. The hamster, not the friend. Oh boy, it's so good to see a hamster comment. These little jerks can do unbelievable things. They're strange little furballs who hate human contact and sleep through the day just to keep you up all night because they run their squeaky hamster wheel for hours. They make the perfect pet. My sand boa, who was at the time thinner than my pinky finger, wrapped himself around my wrist the tightest he could and attempted to eat me. I pulled him off, pat his head, and put him back in his enclosure. Nice try, bud. My cat likes to wake me up every morning at 4 a.m., meowing loudly and knocking off whatever he can from my countertop. I decided to put him in my very large bathroom with food, water, toys, bed, and a litter box. He then proceeded to take the fattest cat crap I've ever seen in my life in my sink. My kitty caught a centipede. It was an awful experience. It was pretty big and I'm guessing crawled up the bathtub drain as that's where I found the cat after she was crying in there. She's pretty quiet, so I try to answer when she's meowing. I saw the bug and said, "Oh, nice job," as she pawed it around, and promptly decided to get the frick out as I hate bugs. That's why I got a cat, you see? She'll deal with the bugs, right? Nope, not good enough. She starts crying as soon as I turned around. She wanted me to watch her eat the bug. I was still so grossed out. Anytime I turned away, she'd cry, make sure we had eye contact, and take a bite out of the centipede. She was just a kitten, so it was an alarming combo of adorable and gross. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I had these 3 fiddler crabs in a 20-gallon tank, 1 boy and 2 girls. After 3 happy months together, I was watching them hang out, and the boy grabs one of the girls and rips her arm off. He then grabs her by the other arm and picks her up, then smashes her against the ground repeatedly until I caught him with a net. She died, and the other girl lived in constant fear until he himself died of natural causes. Crabs do not give a single frick. My ex had hermit crabs, and there were a few incidents where he found crab pieces and had no idea who killed who. They'll drag a crab out of the shell and kill them if they want to use the shell instead. We knew certain ones had names, but we based that on what shell they had. We also had one dubbed the Senator, as if another crab made the water all gross immediately after we replaced it, they'd get up to the tallest point and wave back and forth until one of us went over. It was nice of them to look out for the others. I have a bell hanging on my front door that my dogs ring when I need to take them out. My husky started ringing it, and when I got dressed and put my shoes on, she'd go lay in my spot on the bed and not get out. Once I called her bluff and didn't get up from the bed, so she crapped on my floor. Absolute power move. We had a kitty with extra toes. He'd pick things up and leave them in my shoes as gifts. Usually hair ties, a toy mouse, or sometimes paper. At a party, he picked up a $20 bill out of a friend's pocket sitting on the floor. Then in front of everyone, walked around and stuck it in my shoe across the room. He was a good kitty. No one would have ever believed me if they didn't see it happen. It was hilarious. Cleaning the kitty litter, I was carrying it back to the spot. She jumped into the tray while I was carrying it and just went number 2. I had to stay still until she finished, and she didn't even cover it. My cat used to cover until one day he caught me cleaning his box, and since then he hasn't even bothered. He knows I'll cover it for him if he doesn't, because I don't want flies or the smell. He played me so hard and now I'm stuck being his servant. My family were talking about how the cat stopped bringing mice in the house, and the next day he brought a rat in. When my dog, a male corgi, was little, we were on a walk with 2 female corgis. He tried to be all alpha and pee with his leg up, but he lost his balance. So instead, he continued by holding his front paw up like, "Ladies, try not to get excited." My neighbor was talking about getting a second dog. So my dog got out one night and effed her dog. Now my neighbor has 8 new dogs. I have a 95-pound weem that's just made of steel. When he stands, he's taller than I am. He doesn't have an ounce of fat on his body, just bands of muscle wrapped around his chest and legs. I also have a temperamental 12-pound cat that he is terrified of. The dog occasionally tries to work up the nerve to give the cat a friendly boop. She turns around and lets him lick her butt instead. He ducks his head and complies until she's had her fill, like a good little slave boy, and then she swats his face and runs him off. I once farted in the living room, so Buster decided to diarrhea all over the rug. Jumped from the highest point of the cat tree, which is about 8 feet high, halfway across the kitchen, all for a fly in mid-air. The poor cat misses it entirely, falls to the kitchen table, hits his midsection on the edge of the table, bounces backwards against the chair, and finally lands on his feet on the floor. He shakes it off and continues chasing the fly like nothing ever happened. He did end up eventually catching that damn fly. My cat will just flop over and stare at me before I go to work. I know this sounds crazy, but I swear she knows exactly what she's doing. "Well, human, isn't it about time you went and did that thing you do so you can buy me food and poop sand? Well, hop to it then. Maybe if you do a better job of it, you can buy me something better too." We all know that's what a cat would say if they understood the concept of a job. And it sounds like this one might do. She tried to jump the distance of my swimming pool, but she fell in it. She hates water. My Great Dane picks up a small sapling and expects me to play fetch with it. One of our dogs isn't that big, 60 pounds, but we full-on had to train her not to try to bring trees home instead of sticks. Eventually it got to the point where we just said, "That's a tree," and she'd leave off, but there was a good chunk of time that if she could get her jaw around it, it was coming home. Every time I feed my beagle some meat, he always comes up to me and shoves his mouth next to my nose to let me know he just ate some good stuff. The little jerk swats my paintings or posters off the wall every morning and then runs away and flops over like, "Who, me?" when I get out of bed to make him stop. My dog hates other dogs, and especially the neighbor's happy, fluffy husky, so she keeps barking at the husky, "Frick you, I'm better than you, stop getting my family's attention, rah rah rah." And my dog then showed off her new toy to the husky. Neighbor dog broke the toy, and my dog lost her ever-loving mind. I thought my dog couldn't jump onto the bed because of how small he is, so one day I was eating some food on my bed and he jumped up and ate my food. My dad called our cat a lazy, useless son of a bee. The cat dropped into the pasture, caught a mouse and dropped it at my dad's foot all in the space of 5 minutes. The mouse was still alive and I swear the cat made sure to stare down my dad before he ate it. When I was a kid, I had a basset hound named Fred. Best dog ever. I also had a cat named Patches. Patches was a bit of a troublemaker. She'd sit on the kitchen table and swat at the dog while we weren't looking, and would pester him into barking and chasing her across the house, so then we'd yell at the dog and she'd just prance by as if she wasn't at all responsible. That poor dog. He was the best and that cat just pestered the crap out of him. We got these hard, circular treats that looked kind of like a burger patty for my dog Snoopy one day. He was so excited to try a new treat that he tried to bite it weirdly, like crunch it in one big bite, and it ended up just jamming his mouth fully open. He was freaking out because he couldn't close his mouth and was running all over the house, but wouldn't let any of us help him. Eventually, he got tired and let us help him break it, but he seemed more careful around those treats after that. I have a Mastiff, and he does this defibrillator punch thing to my family jewels every time I get home. I just started my fat cats on a diet, and believe me, the drama is strong. My dog used to hunt and drag back deer, mostly fawns, but sometimes you'd see him come back with a full-on doe. One winter, he dragged a fawn into our under-house area and turned it into a meat locker. He'd run around the house and disappear for hours until we realized he was chomping on his deer-flavored meatsicle. We lived in the mountains with gravel roads, few neighbors, and a free-roaming dog at the time. Every time someone enters the house, my dog runs to get a big bone he has and parades walking like a horse and holding it high. My rabbit once attempted to play soccer with us. Keyword here, attempted. My dog will push things out of my hand if he feels like he isn't being given enough attention. Had a few friends over recently since I just got my old SNES set up, and someone had to pet him at all times while we played, or else he'd try to sit on our hands. He isn't aggressive about it at all, that would be a different story. He just tries to sit on our hands. My kitten thought he could take out the vacuum cleaner after hiding from it. He got his tail sucked up. Not a power head roller, don't worry, he's fine. It was just in the tube. And now whenever I vacuum, he decides on top of the kitchen cabinets is where he'd like to be. I have a 35-pound mutt who is very, very good at hunting. So much so that we don't let her off the leash save in our backyard and in fenced-in dog parks because she's a menace to wildlife. So she's on her 6-foot leash and we're hiking like we do most days at a local trail. She suddenly darts off to the left and into the underbrush and then emerges with a groundhog. She shakes it once and it's dead. If you've never dealt with a groundhog, they are nasty motherfrickers. Well, okay then. I guess even on a 6-foot leash, you're still a menace to society. Dog came into me and my significant other's room while we were partaking in activities and watched for a second and then left. 1 minute later, he came back in with his favorite stuffed animal toy and started making boisterous, enthusiastic whoopee with it right there. Damn dog tried to show me up. I'd just finished cleaning the poop in the back and tossing it out. I go out to my backyard and my dog comes out, looks at me, and goes number 2 again. I even tried getting her to go before I went to do it. We had a gathering yesterday and my sister-in-law brought her 5-month-old baby. My dog came up to her to investigate her toys. The baby was playing with a pink octopus plushie and she pulled the toy away from him. He went upstairs to his toy basket by his bed and brought out his blue monster, came back downstairs and made the rounds everywhere, showing every family member his monster. Finally came up to the baby and put it in her face. As soon as she went to grab it, he pulled it out of her hands and walked around for another 10 minutes carrying it. We all died laughing. They're so cute together, we just have no idea what was going through his mind at the time. I saw my 2 dogs herd a vole under a tree. After they had it cornered, the first dog feigned an attack and scared the vole into the mouth of my second dog. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.